What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today I have something super exciting for you. Today I'm taking my full Landing a Data Job course that I have on Analyst Builder and I'm putting it on YouTube for free. This course has been on Analyst Builder for quite a while. It is a fantastic course to help you land your first data job. If you look right here, we have our Landing a Data Job course, and this is what we're going to cover: understanding the job search, crafting an effective resume, building portfolio projects and a website, applying to jobs and working with recruiters, interviewing for data analyst jobs, and negotiating salary and getting promoted. Now that is a ton of stuff, and I go a lot more in depth in this course than I have in previous lessons just because they were all kind of all piecemealed together. This one is kind of one cohesive course, and so it goes into a lot of detail. This is not the only course from Analyst Builder that I'm going to be putting on YouTube. There are a few of my other shorter courses that have been on Analyst Builder for a while that I'm going to be putting on YouTube completely for free just so that you guys can take them. I have a ton of other courses, as you can see right over here. They are full courses and they are amazing. So if you're wanting to learn a lot of these technical skills, I highly recommend checking it out. And if you do, I will have a link down in the description with a coupon code so you can get access to any of these courses for a lot less. With that being said, I'm about to show you the trailer for the course, and then we're gonna get into the actual content of the course, and I hope that is really helpful to you, and I hope that you enjoy it. Hello everybody, and welcome to our course on landing a data job. This entire course was designed to really help you understand the entire process of landing your first job. In this course, we're gonna get really hands-on with the things that are the most important when you're trying to look for a job. We'll be creating a resume together. We'll also create a portfolio website together. And then we're gonna work on how we can actually reach out to recruiters and land interviews. Once you actually get in front of a hiring manager, you wanna know what you're doing. So we're gonna have an entire module on how to really nail your interviews. And then lastly, we're gonna talk about salaries and how you can negotiate salary and what salaries to expect. These are all things that I wish I had known and I had done back when I was first trying to become a data analyst, but I didn't do that, but I'm really hoping that you will with this course. Hello everybody, and welcome to our course on landing a data job. Before we jump into the actual course, I wanted to introduce myself as your instructor, as well as talk a little bit about the course. My name is Alex Freeberg, better known as Alex the Analyst on YouTube, and I'm gonna be your instructor for this course. Now, back when I was an analytics manager, I hired a lot of people, and so I interviewed a lot of people, and I saw a lot of good resumes, and I saw a lot of bad resumes, as well as good candidates and bad candidates. Before that, I was also on a hiring team where I conducted a lot of technical interviews. And so I have a lot of experience on the actual hiring side, and I know what employers are really looking for. Not only that, when I started trying to become a data analyst back in 2017, I had to really work through a lot of things and figure things out as I went. I was making a lot of mistakes on my resume, I was making mistakes in interviews, and so what I'm going to be doing in this course is making sure that you don't make these same mistakes that I made a long time ago. In this course, we're going to be covering a ton of things intended to help you land a job as quickly as possible. We're going to be taking a look at resumes, projects, portfolio websites, working with recruiters, and a ton more. If you do every single thing that I show you in this course, you're going to have a much better chance of landing a job. So I am super excited to get started on this with you because I know that this is going to be really helpful. Hello everybody, in this lesson, we're going to be taking a look at the responsibilities of a data analyst. Before we can really understand how to effectively apply for jobs and market ourselves and create resumes and all these other things, we really need to understand what a data analyst does. And so that's what we're going to be doing in this lesson, just so we're all on the same page and we all know kind of what the role and responsibility of a data analyst is. Now, all these bullet points are very good, very accurate, but they're pretty technical and I'll kind of break it down a little further once we get into it. But let's start at the very top. It says that data analysts gather data from various sources, including databases, surveys, and APIs. Now, I think this is a very overlooked piece of what a data analyst does because oftentimes you get things like creating dashboards and maybe cleaning data, but a lot of people don't think about where that data comes from. And so oftentimes data analysts work with a lot of people to actually get that data in. Many years ago, I was on a data collection team for almost 3 years, and this is basically what we did. We would go to various data sources and we would work with the people at that company and we would try to get that data in. And the data sits in all sorts of places. Sometimes it's in an Excel file within an SFTP, sometimes it's within an API, sometimes it's in a healthcare EMR system or a database. It can be anywhere, and you have to figure out how to get that data in.
Usually that involves some type of pipeline where you're taking data from one place to another. I worked with a lot of data engineers, database developers, data architects on that kind of work. But as a data analyst, you're going to help a lot with that process, as well as making sure that the data is clean, making sure that the data is how it's supposed to be. Because when you're pulling data in, sometimes things get wonky, sometimes things mess up, and you really have to make sure that you're getting the best raw data that you can. After this, the next part is we clean and pre-process data to ensure accuracy and consistency. Really, that's just a fancy way of saying the data comes in not looking super good, and we have to make it much more useful. And it doesn't actually mean that the raw data is necessarily bad, but let's say you're going to be using that upstream, which means you have the raw data, and in a future process, you're going to be using it for something. Well, depending on what you're using it for, you may need to shape it or change it to fit that use case. So if you're using it in a dashboard, or if you're using it in a product, those will be different things that you'll need to clean and process in order to get it to look that way. And so that's a big part of what data analysts do, cleaning data, making sure that the data is good. The next thing is performing exploratory data analysis to identify trends, patterns, and insights. Now, this is a completely different process to the first two, where you're gathering data, you're cleaning the data. Now we're actually diving in and we're trying to find trends and patterns and insights. Usually you have some idea of what you're looking for when you're doing this type of exploratory data analysis. You at least kind of know what you should be looking for, what kind of should be the outcomes, although you may be surprised sometimes. But I'll give you an example. Back when I worked in healthcare, we were doing a lot of work with cancer data. So we would work with hospitals who were doing research on cancer drugs and all these different things. And we were looking at mortality rates of patients with all these new drugs that they were producing to try to fight off cancer. And so we knew exactly what we were supposed to be looking for. We knew the time ranges, we knew the exact medicines that we were supposed to be looking for, the patients that we were looking for. What we were looking for was efficacy of the drugs. How well were these drugs actually working is kind of what we were trying to explore, but we knew a lot of the other kind of parameters and data that we were supposed to be using. And so you're not always going in blind. This isn't something that you just like, oh, I have no idea what this data does. Usually within the company, they're going to say, hey, here's all this data. This is what we're trying to look for and search for. Go look into this. So you're not always going in blind, maybe like you would with some type of personal project. In the real world, you usually have a lot better idea of what you're supposed to be doing. Next thing we have is developing reports and dashboards to communicate insights to stakeholders and support decision making. Now, I think this is the one that most people think of when they think data analysts, creating dashboards and reports. And honestly, in my career, I've done this probably less than 15% of my job, although I've known other data analysts or other analysts that did this as 75% of their job. So it really depends on the type of company you work for, the type of job that you specifically were hired for. And, if you're working at a big company versus a small company, it all depends. Now, creating reports and dashboards are two separate things. A dashboard is where you'll have charts and graphs and maybe even some subsection of the data to look at. This will be something that you create either for your team or for another team or even for a client or stakeholder. This is something that you'll set up and you'll connect it to a data source. You'll create all these visualizations, and then they can go and look at this dashboard and see certain KPIs, which are key performance indicators, or certain things that they're wanting to track. And they'll always have that on hand. So they can just go to this dashboard and say, oh, okay, we're doing well this week on this data point, or we're doing well on this KPI, or whatever it is that the dashboard holds. When I was a manager of analytics, I was over the whole IT department. And what we did is we worked with all these different teams to create dashboards for them that were really important metrics that they were trying to track and they were trying to improve upon within the IT department. And so oftentimes we would create this dashboard, but then they wanted something a little bit different, or they wanted to track something differently, or the data didn't look right. And so dashboards really aren't static, even though, there's kind of this promise that if you create a dashboard, you don't have to worry about it anymore. But I found that oftentimes you have to go back and you have to revise these things. You have to update them and continually improve them. And some dashboards don't get used. And so sometimes you have to get rid of dashboards, and sometimes teams need new dashboards. And so it kind of all depends on the ebb and flow of the team you're working with and who's using these dashboards. Reports are a little bit different, and reports actually vary quite widely depending on the company. Some companies actually call dashboards reports. Believe it or not, it was really weird when I encountered this. I was like, that's not a report, guys. That's a dashboard. But they fought me on it. That's what they called it internally. But a dashboard to me primarily means some output of data. It could have some type of insights or visualizations like a dashboard, but you're also going to be sending that data as well. And so, for example, back when I was working with a lot of hospitals, we would send weekly reports of their data. And so what we do is we take all this data in a SQL database, we join it, we combine it, we clean it, we did all this stuff, and we put it into a view from all these different tables. And so one single view, and then we would output it as a CSV file. Well, with that CSV file, we also included some of our findings saying, hey, here's what we've seen in the data. We would send it to them for their analyst and their team to also look into and verify and make sure that's right, because the data that we were working with was very sensitive, very, very specific. So we didn't want just one eyes looking at it. We wanted to send our report so that they could then verify it as well. All of these things are very important in the decision making of a team. They need to know certain metrics and certain data points and how these things that they're trying to track are actually going in order to move forward with their work. If their dashboard is showing that whatever metric they're tracking is doing terribly, they need to take action on that. And they need to say, okay, we're really failing in this area. How can we actually get better at this? Because it's causing a lot of issues down the line. And so these things really do make a big difference. The next two things are somewhat similar, but a little bit different. The first one is work with cross-functional teams, including business, IT, and management, to understand data needs and objectives. The next one says communicate complex data concepts and analysis results to non-technical stakeholders effectively. Those two things kind of go hand in hand because as a data analyst, 99% of the time, you're not just working internally. For almost every job I've ever seen with a data analyst, you're either working with a different department within your company or a different team within your company, working with stakeholders or, different managers. I worked with, CEOs of hospitals and just all sorts of people. And not all of them are completely data literate. They don't really understand the in-depth nature of the data, but they have kind of a high-level view of it. And so you need to be able to communicate effectively what you're actually seeing on your side in a way that they're actually going to understand. Because when I was working with CEOs of hospitals, these were doctors of 30 or 40 years, and they understood the data really, really well, but really just on the patient side. They didn't understand the data on the data collection side. And so oftentimes all this technical jargon of, SQL databases and data cleaning and all these different things, they may not fully understand, but they know it's really important. And so sometimes you had to kind of consolidate it down, really understand what they know and what they don't know, so you can effectively communicate that with them. And with that, you're going to be communicating with a lot of different teams. If you're working with IT, they're going to understand a lot more than maybe a management team does or a business team does about the data. So you have to know your audience and communicate that stuff effectively. And so that is, in a nutshell, almost all the responsibilities a data analyst may have. Now, again, you may not have all of these things. In previous jobs, there were times where I didn't really create reports or dashboards, or in another job, I didn't really do the exploratory data analysis. Maybe I just did the data cleaning and data collection. And so you probably aren't going to get all of these in one role, but you'll most likely get 1, 2, or maybe even 3 in one role. So that kind of sets our foundation for the next several lessons going forward in this module. Hello, everybody. In this lesson, we're going to be taking a look at what employers really want in a candidate. Now, I know I talked about this in the introductions, but I was a hiring manager. I was also on a hiring team for many years. So I have a pretty good idea of what hiring managers and companies really want in their candidates. Now, I've numbered these instead of just bullet points. I've actually numbered these in the order that I think is the most important. And so we're going to take a look at these in order of the ones from most important to the least important. They're all really important. I could have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on here of really not important ones. These ones are all very important, but the most important one on this list is proficiency in data analysis tools and languages such as SQL, Python, R, and Excel. If you do not have the skills that they want, they're not going to hire you. That's the simplest one, because if they need somebody who really knows SQL well and you don't know SQL, they're not going to hire you. It's just as simple as that. Even if you're the nicest, kindest, most outgoing person in the world, they're not going to hire you if you don't have the skills to do the job. That is what they're paying for. Now, this is a very small list of skills and tools: SQL, Python, R, and Excel. But if you go to actual job descriptions, usually you'll see 1, maybe 2 of these on the list, and then you'll see other tools as well. Oftentimes within different niches or different industries, there are different tools that they use. You may see things like, Epic EHR health systems, or they need Azure. They want you to know Databricks, or, all these different tools that they use. That doesn't mean that you necessarily have to have a ton of expertise in that skill, but it is very helpful. For example, if they have a tool called Snowflake on their job description, which is a really popular tool, well, you can use SQL within Snowflake. And so if you go look up Snowflake and you test it out a little bit and you're like, oh, wow, I think I got a good handle on this. You can either add that to your resume and customize your resume for that specific job, or you can talk about that in the interview saying, hey, I know within Snowflake you can use SQL, and here's how I know you can use it. And so you're not going to know every single tool out there because there are hundreds, but understanding these core concepts of SQL, Python, R, and Excel are very transferable to a lot of these other tools that they may be looking for. The next thing is strong presentation and communication skills. Now, I put this one above number 3 because personality and cultural fit is very important. We'll get to that in just a second. But as a data analyst, you're going to be presenting and communicating with a ton of people, a lot of people in your department, outside your department, clients, stakeholders. And if you can't present and communicate effectively, then that's a real problem. And so you're going to get questions in an interview. They're going to ask you, tell us about a time where you were really challenged, or tell us about a time where you worked with dirty data and how you handled that. And if you don't present that well, if you don't say, well, here's how we handled it, here's what we did, they can pick up on that very quickly of this person is not very good at communicating their thoughts, their ideas. They may be picking up on your nervousness or just your presentation skills in general, but that can really hurt you if you have the exact same skills as someone else who's presenting really, really well. So I think that one is even more important than number 3, which is good personality and culture fit. This one is kind of the one that is just going off of feeling and personality and vibes, if you want to say it like that. Because I've been on the other side of a ton of interviews where I'm interviewing somebody and they just have a great personality. They really kind of vibe with our team. And we have made choices based off of somebody's personality. We're like, well, these people are pretty similar. They have pretty similar backgrounds. But man, John was we were vibing with John. I really think we would work well together. That actually plays a really big piece. And so you want to, if they're outgoing, you may want to crack a few jokes or maybe just be really smiley and personable during your interview, because that can go a really long way. Now, the culture fit is kind of tough to gauge in some aspects, because if you're working in a tech startup versus maybe something like a nonprofit, those are very different cultures. And so knowing who you're interviewing with and kind of what they stand for and really what they're looking for may make a big difference as well. We'll talk about this, later on throughout this course, but there is something where you need to do research on that company, see what kind of culture they have, what they really value. And if that's not something that is, what you really value, maybe you don't want to work there at all, but you also can use that to your advantage to kind of fit in with their culture when you're interviewing. And that is absolutely something that employers pick up on, whether consciously or subconsciously, because I know there were times where I was actually looking at it and I was like, well, this person fits in good with our culture and they have a great personality. Then there were other times where I was like, I don't know, I just feel like that person would be a better fit. And so they really do pick up on your personality quite a bit. Now, 4 and 5 are important. I'm just going to be honest though. 1, 2, and 3, those are the things that you really need to get right. Those are the top 3 for a reason, because those are the ones that are going to get you hired or not hired. Now, number 4 and 5 are both important, and these are things that employers really want. I'm just being, again, transparent. 1, 2, and 3. Notice that the skills is of number 1, but after that, it really is just about how you present yourself, your personality, who you are as a person. That's number 2 and 3 for a reason. It's because I'm trying to stress this. It's because they really, really care about that. And if you're getting lots of interviews, that means your resume is really good, but you're not getting hired. It probably means that you're not doing really good in the presentation, personality, and cultural fit side of things, whereas your resume is really good. So that's why you're getting a lot of interviews. But I digress. Let's go into number 4, which says understanding the specific industry or domain the company operates in. Now, this one is really important because there are some very specific niches and industries. For example, when I was in healthcare, it would be really hard for someone who is coming from like construction or finance to really understand what was happening in our business or what we were working on with our data, because it was so specific, it was so nuanced. My background in healthcare, because I worked in healthcare before I got into data analytics, I worked in hospitals and I worked in ER rooms. That background really, really, really helped me in my career, because when I got into interviews, I could talk to that specific industry. And so that's something that employers love to see. They love to see that you already have some experience in that industry, that you already can talk to it, and that you understand what that industry does and how that company may do things. That saves them a lot of time of having to train you and having to teach you all this stuff. They know that you're not really starting from scratch. Now, they may hire you or someone else who doesn't have industry experience or knowledge, but they're definitely going to put someone higher up on the list if they already do have some experience in that domain. The next one is effective problem-solving skills to address business challenges using data. Now, I wrote that one kind of jargony, but in essence, what it really means is they're looking for someone who can solve problems. And that's what data analysts do. They come in, they figure out solutions to problems using the data that they have. And oftentimes they're actually going to interview this. So they're going to ask you some open-ended general technical questions, or they'll ask you actual whiteboarding technical questions. And we're going to get into that, I believe, in the next module or the module after that. But they're going to ask you questions to see how you solve problems, how you work through these problems. If you can actually verbalize, what's going on in your head to show that communication and presentation skills while you're problem solving. So these are all things that employers really want to see. They absolutely want someone who knows the skills, has a good presentation and communication skills, a good personality and culture fit, and then just some bonus things that I think really help kind of on top of those top three are knowing the industry and domain, and then really good problem solving skills. These are all things that they will kind of vet out in your interview. So when we get to those sections on interviewing, I'll dive a lot more in depth about how they actually assess these things, what questions they're going to ask, and how you can answer them really well. Hello, everybody. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about marketing yourself as an analyst. Now, this is kind of an introduction because we'll be talking about a lot of these different things 10 times more in depth throughout this course. So in a future module, almost all these things we'll be diving a lot more into. But I want to talk about just kind of high level how to market yourself and show that you are a good person to hire, somebody that they can trust, and that you will be of value to them in their company. What you don't want to do is be like the person over here on the left that's just like, please hire me. I promise I'll do a good job. That's really not how the real world works. And I did mentorship for over 2 years back in 2021 to 2023. And I worked with a ton of people who were actually like this. They had kind of a basic resume, but they never really marketed themselves. They never really put in the extra effort, and they always would complain. I couldn't get a job. I'm not landing interviews. I'm not getting any job offers. And I would tell them, here's what you need to do. And they just wouldn't do it. So this is kind of an overview of what you should be doing and kind of working towards. And in future modules, we'll be diving a lot more in depth into a lot of these and taking a lot more actionable steps. So the first thing that you should be doing to market yourself as an analyst is to create a portfolio showcasing your projects, including data analysis, visualizations, and reports. Now, this should be of no surprise to anyone who has ever followed any of my content anywhere, because I talk about this all the time. A portfolio is a way to show employers that you know what you're doing, because you may not have any industry experience. If you do, then it's a lot easier to show, hey, I've been an analyst for 2 years. And they're going to say, oh, you have experience. Then we have a high confidence in you that you know what you're doing. And it makes it easier for them to hire you. So if you don't have experience, how are you going to show them that you actually know how to be a data analyst? Well, I highly recommend creating a portfolio. And you can do this by creating a portfolio website. And I'll actually show you that in a future module. We'll dive into creating a whole portfolio, how you can put your projects on there and everything like that. But you're going to create these projects that are doing data analyst work. You're going to be cleaning data, exploratory data analysis, creating dashboards and reports. And then you're going to showcase them in this website, and you're going to put that on your resume. You're going to say, hey, if you're interested in my resume, you can take a look at these projects that I've done. That will give them some more confidence that you know what you're doing. Now, I will say I've been a data analyst for 8 years now almost, and I still have a portfolio, a personal portfolio that I have with my best projects that I think are really interesting and really unique. Even though I have many years of experience, I still keep up my portfolio. I think it is that important. The next thing that you should be doing to market yourself is absolutely updating your LinkedIn profile. I cannot tell you how many times this happened where we would have a candidate, they were a really good candidate, and we couldn't find anything about them online. Maybe it was just like a generic, blue outline person on their LinkedIn profile. And I was like, oh, well, that's unfortunate because they don't have a portfolio, they don't have a LinkedIn. And so I couldn't really do any additional research that could have really benefited them. That wasn't necessarily to say that we wouldn't bring them in for an interview. It was just that, we do backgrounds on people. And so it's much easier to get a feel for somebody and to really understand them if I can see their education on their LinkedIn profile, their skills, projects, whatever they're posting about. There are times where you can definitely tell a lot about a person from their LinkedIn profile. Not only that, but I actually got multiple jobs through my LinkedIn profile because I put open to work, and I would have recruiters reach out to me. Now, I got my first 2 jobs doing that, and that was absolutely instrumental. I don't think I would have gotten those jobs if I was not on LinkedIn doing what I was doing. And so I can't emphasize that enough. You absolutely need a LinkedIn profile. If you don't have one, go make one. Go look at my LinkedIn and just see how I've kind of put mine together and try to kind of emulate that. And I think that that will really benefit you in the long run. And just to add even more to that on LinkedIn is in a future module, we'll also be looking at how you can apply to jobs and reach out to recruiters on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is just such a fantastic resource, and I could probably, talk all day about it, but you really need to do that. So that is a way that you can market yourself, have recruiters reach out to you, apply for jobs, all these different things. The next thing is you can join data analytics communities and participate in discussions, forums, and collaborative projects. Now, this one is not as popular for data analysts, and I'm kind of disappointed about that because I love the open source community. I'm a big part of it. I've worked on tons of open source projects through GitHub and all sorts of different places, and I really love that. And a lot of people don't know that that's a thing within the data analyst community. But if you are out there helping people, if you're working on different collaborative projects or open source projects, you're answering people's questions on forums and discussions or on LinkedIn, these things can make a big difference. I've known many people who have contributed to these open source projects, and they get reached out to, they give them their email, and they've gotten jobs through that. And so I really think that's something that data analysts as a whole should do more of, but a lot of people don't. And so that's why I'm telling you to do it, so that you can kind of set yourself apart from other people and you can make a difference in the community. And because of that, you may get noticed, and that can really help you in your job search. Not only that, it's also a great thing to talk about when you actually get into interviews or even putting on your resume. Because I've seen that before and I'm like, oh, that's really cool that they helped with this project or that project. That is a really neat thing to highlight in an interview or on your resume. And so all of these things are very important, and none of these are passive. Most people think that when they are applying for data analyst roles, they just apply and then they're completely passive. They just have to wait for recruiters or hiring managers to reach out to them. And I do not think that is the case. I think you need to be a lot more active in your job search, a lot more active in marketing yourself as a professional and as an analyst. And these are ways that you can do it. It just takes some work and it takes time. And so I highly recommend doing these things. Again, in future modules, we'll be diving into many of these and how you can actually hands-on do them. And so if you don't know exactly what I'm referencing in this lesson, I'll show you in a future one. Hello, everybody. In this lesson, we're going to be taking a look at the key sections of a resume. Now, on the left-hand side, we have this resume. This is one that we'll be using in future lessons. So this is just kind of a framework for talking about some of the sections of a resume. Now, you can see here we have two different sections. We have ones up top, which is contact, work, skills, education. Those ones are ones you have to have. Then we have optional ones down below, summary, projects, and awards. Now, I'm going to get into each of these and talk about what you need in each one of these sections and why they are extremely important. So let's start with the very top one, which is contact information. Now, this one should be pretty straightforward. If you were sending in your resume, you want them to reach out to you to say, hey, come in for an interview. So you want to have your phone number. You should have your email address. In your contact information as well, you can also put links to your LinkedIn, links to your portfolio website, or your location. You don't always have to use your location. And in fact, if you are applying for a lot of remote jobs, I don't really recommend it because sometimes they do care if you're in certain time zones, they won't give you interviews for that. So sometimes there is a reason to leave that portion off. But in our example on the left at the very top, you can see how all of this will look. It'll include phone number, email, and all of those things. So very, very important to have that on there because you do want them to reach out to you for interviews to actually land a job. I found that to be pretty helpful. The next thing that we have is work experience. Now, work experience is way down below in this resume on the left-hand side, but it's near the bottom. And work experience is very, very important because it shows what you've done in the past. If you don't have any experience as a data analyst, we'll talk about that in future lessons about how to display this. But if you already do have experience, you want people to see that. You want them to say, okay, this person already has previous experience. Let's see what they've done and what they actually did in this job. Now, for the work experience, you typically want to add your actual job title, your location, and who you worked for. You should also include the date ranges of when you were actually working there. Maybe you still currently work there in the present. So you can always say, I started in 2017, but now it's 2024. And so you can put those ranges to say you still work there or you worked there in the past. Work experience is an interesting one, as I mentioned before, because some of you guys are right out of college, or maybe you didn't even go to college, or some of you have a lot of years of work experience. And so how we display that on a resume is going to change depending on where you're from. And again, we'll talk a lot about that in the next several lessons when we're creating and crafting our resume. Next, we have our skills section. Now, I think that this skills section in this sample resume is very good because oftentimes what you'll see for, let's look at something like SQL, you'll just see someone write SQL. That's it. They'll just have SQL on the resume and they won't go into any more detail. And that may be enough for some people, but I like to go a little above and beyond that and specify I use SQL Server or I use MySQL or PostgreSQL. And so you'll see right next to SQL, we have those parentheses with that extra information. We don't just do that in SQL. We also do that in the next one in Python, with Excel, with Microsoft Azure. And so some of these skills, we can go into a little bit more detail. I think that is a very important thing to do. And the skills section really is you just give a brief highlight of some of your best skills. You don't have to list every single skill that you know because hopefully that'd be a lot of them, but you want to list the ones that you think are the most valuable to a potential employer. Next, we're going to include our education. Education is important for most employers. They do care if you went to college or you didn't go to college or what degree you have, because if it's something really relevant, you can talk to that and you can explain how that education is going to make you more qualified for a position. So you should include your education. The only caveat to that is if you didn't go to college in any way, shape, or form, you maybe just have a high school degree, I might not include that. But in the education section, you're going to include the actual degree that you got, where you went to college, where it was located, and the year that you graduated. You can go a little above and beyond that, especially if you have a degree that's related to data or analytics. If you did any programming classes, you could mention those right below your education section. You can also include the majors that you had. And so that's what this resume has on it. Now, let's go on to the optional section. Now, you can do a summary, and this resume on the left-hand side does not include a summary, but a summary is just a brief narrative of who you are, what you know, and what you're looking for. So for me, I might say I have 8 years experience as a data analyst. I specialize in SQL, Python, and cloud platforms, and I'm looking to expand my skills and my knowledge in the healthcare area. And so that's just a quick example. In a future lesson, I'll show you some summaries that you can use. But that is what a summary is. It's just kind of a narrative of who you are in a really quick nutshell. Next, we have projects. Now, projects are something that we're going to look at in the next module. We'll really dive into them. We'll be setting up a portfolio website and all of those things. But just to highlight what projects are a way to demonstrate your skills. So you can build something using real data. You can do some type of analysis or a dashboard or a report or whatever you are wanting to do. And you can display that and use that on your resume. So for this sample resume over here in this project section, we have 4 separate projects. Each of these projects does something very different, but they're very useful to demonstrate what you can do. Oftentimes on the name of that project, let's say that first one is Data Science Job Market Exploratory Data Analysis. That is the project. You'll use some type of hyperlink to actually link back to your project. And I'm going to show you how to do that in the next module. But projects are fantastic for 2 reasons. One, you can put it on your resume. You can show this person's taken a lot of initiative to build something that may help you get an initial interview. But also when you get into the interview, if they ask, hey, how have you used SQL? You don't just have to say, well, I took a course on using SQL. You can say, well, here's what I built using SQL. And I'm just saying SQL for a sample project. And so that is something that is very, very helpful. And so it's optional, but I do highly recommend including projects. Even after 3 or 4 years of experience as a data analyst, I still had projects on my resume. I think they're very useful, maybe up until a certain point. Once you become maybe a manager of analytics or a director of analytics, then you may not include them because your work experience is going to speak for itself. Lastly, you can include awards, and this will go usually at the very bottom of your resume. Awards are accolades, certifications, certificates that you are proud of, that you want a potential employer to see and know. And instead of saying awards, you could also say certifications if you want to specify it's only certifications, but certifications can go under that awards section. But for a certification, you may have a Tableau desktop certification or an AWS data analyst certification. And if you really want to include that on your resume, that's where you would put that. So these are the key sections of a resume. In the next several lessons in this module, we're going to be diving into all these different sections. We'll be looking at the order in which you want to place these sections. We will talk about the right way to write it, the wrong way to write it, and I'll have sample resumes as well and templates that I think you should use that you could fill out with your information to customize your resume and make a really solid resume to apply for jobs. Hello, everybody. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about the ordering of your sections in your resume. And this is actually quite important. And this is something that I see all the time on resumes, especially when I was a hiring manager, where people just had weird sections in weird places and it didn't really flow well. And you have to think about it from a hiring manager's perspective, which most people don't. And so that's why we're talking about it, so that you can have that perspective when you are creating your resume. Now, we have this resume here. Let's zoom in quite a bit so you can see it really well. This is our sample resume. I added in a summary section. It's the same skills section. I just, from the previous lesson, I got rid of some of the projects, kept the same work experience. And then we have our education and then our awards section at the bottom, which you could call certification since that's all we have in this one. But we have a lot of different sections. These are the main ones that you're going to have in your resume. Now, right now, I have it in the optimal place that I want it because this is the order in which I think it is the absolute best. And I'm going to talk you through my thought process, and then I'm going to change things up a little bit, and we're going to kind of walk through some different scenarios. Because again, everyone's in a different place. Not everybody has work experience. Not everybody has the best skills or a good summary. So I'm going to talk through some of these different scenarios, and we're really going to nail down the order in which your sections in your resume should be. Now, this person has a little bit of experience. They already have some analyst work that they've done in the past. When I'm thinking about this from a hiring manager's perspective, you have to remember that hiring managers aren't going to spend 20 minutes reading through every bit of your resume. This is at least, let's say, a minute or two of reading through, really considering it. But you can gloss over this in about 15 to 20 seconds. And that's what most hiring managers do. Now, where do they start? Every single hiring manager is going to start right at the top. They're going to say the top, oh, there's their name. Let's skim down. They're going to go down and to the right. That is just how people scan things. And so what you want to do, the logic behind all of this, is you want to put the things at the top that give you the best chance to land a job. That's why I personally don't have a summary section at all, because a summary section is a lot of reading and most people aren't going to read it unless they're extremely interested in your resume for some reason. But most hiring managers aren't even going to read it. They're just going to kind of skip to the more important parts like the skills, projects, work experience. So just for the sake of things, if you do have a summary, it's going to be at the top, but let's get rid of that summary entirely. Because this is actually, we'll look at one of my previous resumes in somewhere in this section, and you'll see that I don't use a summary. I'm not really a big fan of them. So for this person, they have a little bit of work experience. The only thing that I might change is I might bring this work experience and place it right here above the projects. I might do that, although they had some pretty good projects in this resume, and so you might keep them as well. But for that might be personal experience. So let's look at this from a hiring manager's perspective. We get this resume in front of us, and the first thing we look down at is the skills section. Does this person have the skills that we are looking for? Then we say, okay, whoa, they have SQL and they have Tableau and Excel, 3 of the skills that we really wanted. Now let's go look at their work experience. And now we're going to look down and we're going to say, okay, here's some experience that they've had, and that is really strong. Now for this person, since they have work experience, they're going to put it at the top. But let's say, for example, you do not have work experience. All you have is projects. I would put my work experience at the bottom. So I would keep my projects. I'd put my projects up top. Put that right here. And I may even put my education above this as well if you have a good educational background, because again, you want them to see the more important things that you think will help you land a job. And so if your work experience isn't good, let's say you just have a job at Wendy's or McDonald's, just taking fast food for an example. Well, that isn't great experience, honestly, for a data analyst position. So you're probably going to put that near the bottom because that isn't the most helpful. What you want them to do is you want them to take a look at this resume and say, oh, this person has the skills. They've built some really cool projects. Let me see what work experience they have. Okay, they work at Wendy's, but they're right out of college. I see they're right out of college. So of course they don't have any experience, but this person meets what we're looking for. Now, take the opposite of that. Let's put, just for example, I'm cutting and pasting this a lot. Let's take, just for example, we're going to do it like this. And then we're going to put the skills, just as a really bad example, we're going to put it way down here at the bottom. And then your education was really good. So we're going to put that maybe right here. There we go. This resume is getting all sorts of messed up. By the way, you can, whoops, I messed something up here with the context section. Let me see what I messed up here. I think the skills section was messing that piece up. So we'll just keep the skills here. It's perfectly fine for this example. But what they're going to see at the very top, they're going to first look at your resume. They're going to say, okay, here's their name. They work at Wendy's. Okay, that's not great. All right, they have some of the skills and they have some of the projects, but that may leave a bad impression right off the bat. They may not even get down to the skills section. They may be one of those hiring managers who's like, oh, nope, that looks terrible. Get rid of it. You don't want that to happen. I promise you that does happen. Sometimes they just overlook it because it doesn't look right or doesn't have the right things at the top. So I'm going to hit Control Z a little bit. I want those skills and I want those projects and I want things that are really attractive to an employer to be at the very top. And so the ordering does matter quite a bit. So again, skills, projects, if you have relevant work experience, it can be near the top. But if you don't, put it near the bottom. If your education is really solid, let's say you have like a master's degree in stinking data analytics, whatever it is, you can bring that. Sometimes people will put that at the very top. So let's just put that right here. So let's just put their education. So like where a summary would go, you'll have your education. And this might say, there's a bachelor's, and then we'll say master's in data analytics. And we'd include some other things. We'd say, this is where I went to school, East Carolina University. I never went and got my master's, so I wouldn't be able to put that. But for this person, they can. Let's bolden this. It's close enough. So now you can see that this education is at the very top. They have great skills. They have good projects. They may not have any real world work experience. Maybe you're still working at Wendy's, but everything else looks really good. And so we have a whole lesson on just this because a lot of people mess this up. And so I really want you to consider your resume. Look at your resume and think, what are the things that are the most attractive to an employer? Is it my skills section? Is it my work experience? Is it my projects? Or do I have a really great education like right up here? Think about what is the most attractive and put those things at the top. Hello, everybody. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about quantifying your work experience. Now, this is really tough for a lot of people to actually quantify and put into words the impact that they're having in a company or whatever process they've done or how much something has actually helped a company. It's very tough for people to do this. And in fact, what we're going to be doing is looking at my resume from about 3 years ago, back in 2021. And then we're going to go through it and we're going to fix some of the things that I've previously done. So we're going to quantify some of the job descriptions and some of the things that I actually had and wrote, but didn't quantify it in a successful way. And so we're going to fix one of my previous resumes. And I hope this is really helpful because genuinely, I have seen so many resumes that are exactly like mine. They're pretty good, but you could add a little bit more detail to it. It would make it a lot better. So really quickly, before we get into actually quantifying it, let's look at my previous resume. Let's see how 2021 Alex was. We have my contact information up top. That is my real email, but I changed it from my previous one. That's not my current city or phone number. But we have our skills section. These are my real skills at the time in 2021. We have my work experience. So I had just become a manager of operational analytics and intelligence. Before that, at AmerisourceBergen, I was a data analyst 2 and then a data analyst. Then I had KPN. And believe it or not, I had 2 pages on a previous resume. And we haven't talked about this yet, but I don't recommend having 2 pages on your resume. I recommend just having 1, and you should be able to fit it into 1. I just wrote a ton. I had a summary section, and then I had a bullet point section for every job, and I really didn't need this for everything. I could have put it into bullet points, and it could have been a lot more succinct, and it could have been a lot better. So with that being said, let's look specifically at this work experience, and let's see where I think I failed, and then we'll see how we can fix it. So if we come through here, let's go down. Here's one specifically that I know I should have been able to quantify a little bit better, because back in this data analyst and data analyst 2 jobs, I was doing a lot of automations. I was trying to streamline processes that we were doing manually into more automated ways. And that saved us a lot of time. But for whatever reason, I didn't write about how much time that saved us or anything like that. So for this one, I developed a file processing script in Python, which organizes incoming clients' files into correct folders and outputs data profiles of each file. Now, that was super helpful. And I remember creating this, and that would save us like 30 minutes for each file. And so each week that was saving us maybe 2 hours of work or maybe more. And so I easily could have added that into this. I just didn't think to do that. And that's just one example. This is another one. This is one I was really proud of. I created this gap analysis script in SQL Server that basically compared 2 unique databases and looked at all of the changes between the data. That was something that we were doing completely manually for a long time. And I was like, there has to be a better way to do this. So I figured out how to do it. And that was something that was super, super helpful. I ended up sending that to multiple teams and they used it. And so I absolutely think we could quantify this a little bit better. Now I'm going to spoil this for you a little bit. I've already gone through and I fixed these things. I've already gone through and quantified them. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pull these up side by side, the old, which is this one, versus the new one. And we're going to take a look at the difference. All right, so let's take a look at the differences. I just highlighted in yellow some of the ones that I worked on. Now you could probably go through and quantify more of these, but these are the ones that I think were pretty easy to quantify and to show a little bit more value in the work that I was doing in these positions. So for this one right here, I kept basically the same thing. I shortened it just a little, but at the end, here's how I quantified it. I said, outputs data profile of each file, saving 2 hours of work per week. Now you might say manual work or something like that, but I think if you're saying, hey, I'm saving us time by developing these processes, and here's how much time it's actually saving us, 2 hours per week, that can be a very easy way to quantify it. I did the same thing right down here. Because again, what we were doing was this was saving us time. We could have done it manually, but I created an automated system and that saved us 6 hours of work per week. Now you could even go into a little bit more detail saying maybe I sent it to another team and all these teams, it saves us 30 hours per week total or something like that if you want to word it in that way. But again, saving time is something that data analysts should be able to do. You should be able to quantify, here's how I've saved time. Now there's one other one, and let's scroll down real quick. This is my very first job that I worked at as a data analyst. I'm going to read this one to you, and then I'll go down and show you what I did. So for this one right here, this was the family place. It was a nonprofit, and all of our money was through donations or through federal or state grants. So what I said was I created new metrics and data sets, which allowed organization to apply for 3 grants not previously eligible. So we just weren't collecting the data that we needed to apply for these grants, and I made that happen. Now, these grants were actually big grants. Each of them was like $200,000 or maybe $100,000 to $200,000. And so what I did to fix this one is I said I created new metrics and data sets, which allowed organization to apply for 3 grants not previously eligible, which led to $450,000 in additional revenue. I may even say maybe not revenue, but funding. That might be a good term for it. But we now have a quantifiable impact of the work that I was doing. I applied for grants, but maybe it was only for $5,000, and that's not really helpful to another company that may be applying for. But if they see I brought in $450,000, they may say, wow, that would be amazing if this guy could do that for us. And so being able to articulate the impact that you've had on a business through a process or a system that you set up or the work that you're doing can show a potential employer that you are a good person to hire. And so that is how you can take some of your generic job descriptions and you can add a little bit more detail to it, which is really helpful. Now, I know that quantifying things like this is not super easy, but just ask yourself a few questions. Am I making my company money or am I saving my company money? If your answer is yes to any of those, then go down deeper. How much time did you save? How much money did you save? How much money did you earn from doing this task? Honestly, this doesn't have to mean exact science. You don't have to kind of measure it down to the minute that you're saving. Just give estimates. How much time about are you spending on this type of work per week? And then if you are able to automate that, then hey, you save that much time. Or if in this case, you applied for new grants, how much money are you making from those grants for your company and funding? And so you can do that with each of your job descriptions, and then you can again go through and fix that and quantify it. Hello, everybody. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how you can link to your projects in your resume. Now, I'm not just talking about putting your actual project in your resume like we have down here. I'm talking about actually going over, and we're going to come right over here. And let's say we have all these projects in this portion of our GitHub. Now, in the next lesson, I'm going to show you how to do all of this and put all your projects in and create your portfolio website, and we'll dive into all that. But let's say you're already at this stage, you already have a project created, and it's somewhere on the internet. It doesn't have to be here. But let's take this one right here. We have this movie portfolio project. Let's scroll down. We have all of our code. I'm sure some visualizations, and this looks great. And so we want to hyperlink this right here. So we're going to take this link. We're going to go back to our portfolio. And what we're going to do is we're going to highlight over where this project needs to go. And this is just something that I think goes kind of above and beyond. And then we're going to go up here to the search. We're going to type in hyperlink. Now you can add or insert. We're going to say add hyperlink. And there's a few different ways you can do this. What we're going to do is existing file or web page. So ours is the web page. We're going to put in the address. So we're pasting in that URL. We're clicking OK. And as you can see right here, if we hover over, it says control click to follow the link. So let's hit control and we're going to click on it. And it's going to take us to the URL that we posted. And so this is something that I would do for every single one of these projects. Now, the reason being is because when they come in here, they're going to see that there's this hyperlink. You can keep it blue, you can keep it underlined, or you can, let's format painter this, go right here. You can even keep it the same thing, but when they hover over it, they'll still be able to click on it. It doesn't have to be that blue right there. Let's come back over here. And so hyperlinking to this, or you can put something like right here, you can say click here or something like that. Really whatever your preference is, honestly. Let me hit Control Z real quick. But you can hyperlink to that. And then again, once you have that whole portfolio website set up, which we'll be doing in the next module, you can put your portfolio website link right up here so they can go and look at all of your projects together. I think that kind of goes above and beyond. So with all of these things, you should be able to set up a really great resume using the templates that we've had and what we've looked at in previous lessons. Be sure to fill out all of your information that you've done. If you don't have any projects and you're saying, well, I don't have any projects yet. Well, on Analyst Builder, we have some of the best projects you're going to find out there in our SQL and Python and Pandas and Tableau, and all of our courses have a bunch of really fantastic projects. So go take those courses and you'll have really good projects to put in your project section of your resume.
Hello everybody, in this lesson, we're gonna be talking about why you need projects and a portfolio website. Now really quickly, if you do not know what a project is something that you're building with a certain skill where you're using real data. So let's say for example, you wanna create a project in Tableau. So you go and get a real data set, you're gonna put that into Tableau, build your data visualizations, build your dashboard, and then you're going to publish it. That dashboard is a project that you can showcase in a portfolio website. Here on Analyst Builder, we have multiple projects in almost every single course. So if you've been going through the data analyst roadmap, you should have a lot of projects on hand. In this module, I'm going to show you where you can put those projects so that we can actually put them into a portfolio that we're going to build in this module as well. But to get back to the topic at hand, why do you actually need these projects? Why do you need a portfolio website? Well, these projects, one, are proof that you actually know how to use these skills. Anybody can put SQL or Python or Tableau or any other skill onto a resume, but it doesn't actually mean they know what they're doing. And so projects are there to show that you actually know these things, and a portfolio website is to put all of your projects into one place so that a potential employer or a hiring manager can go and look at this website and look at all the work that you've done. So the first reason why you want projects and a portfolio website is to help you actually land an interview. You can put that link to your portfolio website on your LinkedIn profile or on your resume. And so when someone is actually looking you up or they're looking at your resume, they can click on it and they can go to your projects. That genuinely can help you stand out amongst all the other people who they are looking at. The other reason why a project and a portfolio website can be really helpful is when you actually land the interview. I am absolutely positive that in an interview, you're going to be asked, what do you know about SQL? What do you know about Tableau? What do you know about Excel? And what you could say is, well, I've taken a course on SQL, and that's about as far as you go. And you could say, well, I learned, temp tables and I learned all these things, which can be great. But what you really want to do is you want to talk about those projects. That's going to give you a much better response to these questions, and it's going to be a lot more impressive. So if they're asking you about SQL, you can talk about how you actually got that data. You can talk about how you clean that data and what you were actually using that data for. If you want to go into even more detail, you can talk about the actual data cleaning process. Here's what I did to the data. Here's why we needed to do it. And again, that can be really impressive to the person who's actually listening to it, because those people typically know what they're doing. If they're asking you about SQL, they typically know SQL really well. So those are the main reasons why you want to have projects as well as a portfolio website, not only to help you land an interview, but to have really good responses when you are in an interview.
Hello everybody, in this lesson, I'm going to show you how you can upload your projects to GitHub. Now, why is this important? It's because this is going to be our main repository for storing our projects so that when we build out our portfolio website, we have something that's kind of storing everything for us. If you have Python projects in Jupyter Notebooks and SQL projects in MySQL and other projects just scattered all around, it can be kind of hard to put them all in one place and keep track of them. And so that's what GitHub is really, really good for. All you need to do is to create a GitHub account. It's pretty easy. I'll leave a link in the description so you can create a GitHub account. What we're going to be doing is we're going to come right up here to repositories. A repository is something where you can keep a lot of different files in one place. So let's say we're going into our Excel for data analysis course. Here you can see we have a bunch of different things. We have actual Excel files. And these are just for a lot of the lessons in the Excel course. But then also we have full projects. So the data cleaning completed project, and you're able to store them in here. And so what we want to do is we want to create a new repository. And that's going to be very important for when we're actually creating our website. So let's come up here. Let's go to new. We're going to come in here and we're going to call this Alex_portfolio. And you can really put anything you want. Did I spell that wrong? You can really put anything you'd like. You can put your full name. You can put anything. We're going to make this public. If it is private, it makes it a little bit more complicated to share and do other things. So we're going to make it public. We're going to come down here. We're going to click Create Repository. So now our repository is set up. And what we need to do is we need to actually add our files to it. So if you come right down here, it says get started by creating a new file. We don't want to do that. We want to upload an existing file. So over here, I have this Python project. This was in our Pandas course. This is one of our final projects where we deep dive into some food data, or at least people purchasing food, if you want to say it like that. So we have this entire project and I want to put this as one of our projects that I want to add. This is a marketing analysis for this food company. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose files. And so right in here, we have all of our projects. We have this YouFood marketing analysis. We're going to click on this and we're going to click open. And now it is ready to go in. So we're going to go ahead and commit changes. And what this is going to do is actually going to take your file, it's going to store it in GitHub, and we'll take a look at it once it's ready. So now this is in here. This is our first project that we've added. Let's go ahead and click on it. As you can see, this is our code. So if we, well, we would need to reformat this just a little bit because it has the entire outputs in here. But this is our project. This is all of our code. And this is our data visualization and everything like that. When we run this up here, you'll notice that we have, this is some of the data that we output. There's thousands of rows. So there's like 2,000 rows in here. So let's scroll back up to the top. What we're doing is we're reading in the entire data frame. We would most likely want to do data frame.head or something like that for a lot of our outputs, so it doesn't take up so much space in our projects. But that's just one example, something to consider. Now let's go back, because now we're going to add in another file. So we have this other file. Let's come down here to the MySQL Workbench. This is a data exploration. Now, what's unique about this is we don't get all the outputs. You just see the code. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this when we're creating our websites on how you may want to display this or how you may want to show this, because you don't have any outputs. Sometimes you want to show that. You want to show, hey, here's what I wrote, but then here's my output. And so I'll show you how to do that as well. But you don't just have to put Python files or IPYNB, which is a Jupyter Notebooks file. We can also add MySQL files. So let's go ahead and upload another file. Go ahead and choose your files. And let's come in here and we'll choose this housing data exploration. Let's go ahead and upload that, commit changes. And now we have two projects right in here. One's a Python and one is SQL. Now you can upload other files as well. Let's actually come in here just really quick to the SQL one. It'll show the SQL code, just like how we had it in the file. So you can put Python, you can put SQL in there. You can put other types of files. And let's go ahead and try to do this. Let's go to add files. Let's upload a file and let's choose our file. Let's say we have this US debt tracker project completed. Let's open that up. It is an Excel file, so we're going to commit these changes. And now we have this Excel file, but let's click into it. You're not going to get a preview of this. You're going to have to either view the raw, or if you wanted to display this on your website, you may have to take screenshots of it. And so Excel files, at least for GitHub, is a good place to store your project, but it may not be a great way to display your project. And again, in the next two lessons, when we're building out our websites, I'll talk about what I recommend and what I've seen that I really like, and we'll actually be building these portfolio websites as well. So now we have this Alex portfolio repository where we're storing all of our projects. Now there are some projects that you wouldn't want to store in here. One's like a Tableau project. So these are some of the projects that we did in our Tableau course here on Analyst Builder. And these ones are perfect because what you can do is you can actually come into this churn dashboard and you can copy this link and you can actually share it. So this is a shareable dashboard that we've already built. And so what we can do on our website is we can link directly to this URL. We don't have to put this into GitHub. And so this is actually really nice for creating portfolio projects. If you have multiple projects, this is a fantastic thing to do and add to your portfolio because it's very easy for someone to go in and check it and look at your work. And so that is how we add our projects to our repository in our GitHub. And this is what we're going to be using in the next several lessons. And I'll show you lots of tips and tricks, and we'll be building this out and it'll be really great. Hello, everybody. In this lesson, we're going to be building our very own portfolio website using Wix. Now, there's tons of website builders out there. I mean, a ton. So you don't have to use this one. That's just the one that we are going to use for this lesson. This is one that I've used in the past. I'm pretty familiar with, and they have a completely free option. And so that's what we're going to be using today. And I'll show you if you want to upgrade, you can, but you don't have to. You can create a completely free website. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to get in here. We're going to log in. We're going to get started and building it all out. This is kind of what it's going to look like. It may not look exactly like this because when we do the live version, we may go a little bit more in depth, but I put this together because this isn't my own personal one. This is the one that we're building. I put this one together in 30 minutes. It was pretty quick. It looks really good. And we'll add, we have this about section, so you can add some more information. We have a contact section to let them call you or contact you. So this is really what you need for a portfolio website, something to showcase your projects, and then a way for them to contact you. That is the most important thing. And we can customize this, and you can customize this so much, and I'll show you how to do that in this lesson. So let's get out of here. Let's just exit out of this because what we're going to be doing is we're starting from scratch. We're going to build as we go, see where the flow takes us. But here's one thing that you do need. You need your projects. So right here, we have our Tableau projects. We have a project right here for food marketing analysis. We also have our GitHub up here, which is where we're storing some of these projects. And I also have pulled up over here are MySQL. So this is, one of the projects that we did in SQL, which I'll show you how to showcase something like a SQL project because it can be a little bit more difficult. And that's all things that we'll take a look at in this lesson. So let's come right back over here. So let's get started with our websites. Come over here. Let's go ahead and log in. I'm just going to continue with Google, sign into one of my accounts, and then we'll be good to go. All right, I just signed up using an account I've never used before, so I'm starting from scratch just like you. Now they're going to ask you a bunch of questions. I personally am just going to skip all this because I want to just build it myself. But if you want to go through all those questions, you can. Another thing that you can do is use their AI. It may help you get started with some templates or ones that you want to use. So if you want to try that, start this chat, try setting that up. I've done it. It actually works quite well, but I want to set up without the chat. We're just going to skip all of this as well. And all we want to do is to get to our dashboard, which is loading right now. Now, the first thing that we need to do is we have to name our website. So we're going to call this one Alex's Portfolio. I have to spell this right. Portfolio website. And again, I need to spell that right. Let's go ahead and click continue. You can answer these questions if you want. Again, I'm just going to skip these because we're not going to need them. Let's continue to our dashboard. Now, this is our dashboard, and there's a ton of things that you can do in here. Again, these website building platforms have a ton of stuff in them. And most of this you don't really need, especially for something simple like a portfolio website. We are going to need almost all this. And I'm going to show you what I think you should be using and what you should be looking at while you're in here. But if you want to get something like a custom domain, you can go and buy them and they're going to facilitate that, but it is going to cost money. And then you're going to have some type of hosting fee, but that's going to cost some money. But let's go right down here. We're going to go to design site. What we can do is we can generate a design with AI. And if you want to do that, go for it. You don't have to do the exact setup that we're doing in this lesson. This is more just showing how to do it, how to create the links, how to create the design, and the important information that you need in there. But if you want to do it with a different design, I'm all for that. I think you should do that. But we're just going to be using a template because it's going to get us started a lot faster. Let's come up here and let's say we want a personal blog. Now let's scroll down. The blog, or the one that we're using, is this one right here. Now, the reason I'm doing a blog is because for this style, for this kind of portfolio website, you're able to add some narrative in it. You're able to write a blog and add some detail. You're not just linking to this project, which you can easily do, and it'll just show this project right here. And maybe you do have some notes like I have, but you want to create some more narrative because in here, we can't really show the output. We can't show how we cleaned the data or why we cleaned the data or something like that. And so having some type of narrative can be very helpful. Again, you don't have to do that, but I'll show you how to do it in this one if you want to. So let's go ahead and click on this one. This one's called Fashion Blog. Let's go ahead and we can take a look at it. We can view it first. This is what it looks like as it was before we came in and edited it. But we're going to say edit this site, and it's going to pull up right over here for our own website. So now we are in the website building portion of Wix. This is where we can add elements, add sections, pages, menus, site design, all these different things. And we can come in here, and as you can see, we kind of hover over things and we're able to change these. Now, if you've never used Wix, it can be a little bit confusing, but that's why I'm here. I'm here to show you how to do it to make your life a lot easier. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to come right in here and we're going to say, I want to change this blog. So I'm just going to click into it a few times. I'm just going to double click, and then I'm right here. I'm going to call this Alex's, and I don't want to call it like that. I'm going to say Alex's Portfolio. Just like that. You can change the font. You can change the boldness if you want to make it bold or underlined or really anything like that. You can, how do you do it? There you go. If you want to make it underlined, you can. I'm not going to do any of that, but you feel free to do that. I'm not going to stop you. Now, if we click out of this and let's scroll up. So we have a few different things up here in this header. We have a blog, an about, and a contact. We also have a search bar, and then we have some social media posts. Now, we don't need a search bar in here. And so what we can do is we can come in here. We don't have a way to delete this right in here. What we actually need to do is come over to this pages and menu. So this is our site pages and menu. This is kind of an overview of how everything connects within your website. So if you click on the blog, it's going to take you somewhere. If you click on the about, it's going to take you somewhere. And right up here in this site menu, this is that top bar. And so we have this search results. And what we can do is we can delete this. And we're going to click delete. And now we don't have that search bar anymore. And so later on, if we want to, we can get rid of this. But we just have this section here. And this holds everything we want. Now, this is just text. So I'm going to call this portfolio. And that looks really good. Now, these things are really helpful as well, these little links over here. And so you can set these social links. Now, this is very helpful because if you have a LinkedIn profile, if you want to link to your GitHub profile, if you want to link to your Instagram or wherever you want to take them, you just come in here and you're going to put your social link right in here. Now, I don't have one that I'm going to be putting, but you should do this. And you can either set it to open in a new window or a current window. I almost always am going to recommend the new window, because when you click on it and it opens up on top of this one, and so it gets rid of this. If somebody wants to go back to your portfolio, you have to click the back button. That's just not super user friendly. So I always recommend, or 99.9% of the time, I'm going to recommend you do the new window. So go ahead and set those social links, and you can add others as well, like LinkedIn buttons and whatnot. So be sure to set those. The next thing to do, and we'll get to all of these things. The next thing to do is let's just do our about. I will say the blog portion is going to take us the longest, and I'll show you that kind of towards the end. We'll link our projects, we'll write our narrative, we'll take the screenshots, we'll do all this stuff, and I'll show you how to do that. The easiest part, again, is just the about. We'll finish our about section, we'll do our contact section, and then we'll be rocking and rolling. So let's come into here. Let's do an about Alex. And believe it or not, that is not me on the left-hand side. This is someone else. So we're going to change this background, and I'm going to go to image. And you can take stock images or things like that, but I recommend putting a picture of you. So I'm going to go to upload media. We're going to go to upload from computer. And believe it or not, because I make a lot of YouTube videos, I have lots of headshots. But if you don't, you should go get one. Have your friend take a picture on their nice iPhone and send it to you or something like that. But let's take this really great picture of me. Wow, this is good stuff. We're going to take that picture and we're going to change the background. So let's go ahead and do that. And there we go. So for this one, at least, we're rocking and rolling. And let's just preview this website really quick. So the preview gives you just what it looks like in its current state. And so if we scroll to the top, we have portfolio, there's our blog, about, and contact. And we may even change that quote unquote blog to projects. Actually, we should do that. We will do that in a little bit. Then we have Alex's portfolio. These will be where your projects are going to be. They're not going to look like this, of course. But then we have our about section. There's also some other sections, and we're going to delete almost all of these things. But this is what it currently looks like. Let's go back to the editor. And we're going to change some of this up. Now, this is just a quick about section. When they click on this get to know me, it's going to take them to your about section. So let's just come in here and write a little bit about ourselves. I'm going to say I'm a data analyst with, I'm just making this up. So let's say 5 years of experience in Charleston, South Carolina. I specialize in SQL, Python, and cloud applications. And we'll just leave it at that. So super simple. I would add a little bit more, if being honest, but this is good for now. If somebody clicks on this get to know me button, it's going to take them over to this about section. Now you can get to these pages by coming up here, going to the site menu, clicking on this about right here, and it's going to take you there. And so now, again, we have another person. I don't know this lady. So we can use the same image if you want. I'm going to come in here. Let's use a different one. Let's get crazy. Let's use an older one. So this is, oh, you know what? I have these photos. Don't look at these. These don't look great. But I have this one right here. I'm going to use this one because this was just, I don't know. I got the headshot taken, so I might as well use it in this video. All right, we have this picture of me smiling. I'm in a suit. Let's see if this looks even half decent, at least when it changes it. And it looks like I changed the wrong background. I don't know. Let's go back. Let's go to our site files. Let's select this. Maybe I didn't select it. Maybe that was the problem. There we go. Oh boy. That's a big old picture of my face. You know what? Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. It's not the worst photo. So we're gonna say meet Alex Freeberg. This is where you're gonna go into a little bit more detail. You can talk about where you went to school. Don't do this. Let's get rid of that. You can talk about where you went to school, where you currently live. Just talk a little bit about yourself. Even at the bottom, you could add a little bit of section about, you know, some things you're passionate about. Really, whatever you want. I'm going to say I'm a data analyst out in, and I'll, you know, write a little bit. We're not going to spend all of our time on this. I'll say I have experience working in healthcare and IT for the past 5 years. I'm sticking with the 5 years thing because I wrote it on the other page. I don't want to contradict myself. Down here, I can talk about some of my skills. I'm going to say I have extensive skills in SQL, Excel, Python, Tableau, Power BI, and the list can go on. I'll just do a ... here. I might even talk about my family. I have, you know, you don't have to, but I have a family. So I have a wife and 3 kids, of whom are amazing. And again, write some narrative down here. I would talk a little bit more about your education, work experience, things like that. And at the bottom, at the very bottom, maybe say, I have 3 kids. I enjoy mountain biking. I don't really. I enjoy mountain biking, surfing, and the beach. There you go. Something like that. So this is just, again, a narrative about you. Most people aren't going to spend a lot of time here. They're going to look at your projects, a little bit about your portfolio. They might look at your contact section. So honestly, this about section isn't crazy important. One thing I want to change right down here is that part. Just looked wrong. And another part, we don't need this because they're not subscribing to a newsletter. So we can right click and we'll click delete. And I think we should be able to get rid of this. There we go. Again, you'll need to link your socials down here. Let's see if I can get that to go higher. I wonder if I can bring this just like that. Just little things that'll make it look a little bit better. You know what I mean? Let's get it right there. I think it looks nice. Really simple. So you have your social links, blog about, contact, and we're good to go. So now, let's just say our about section is done. I do recommend going a little bit more in depth than I did. Let's go to our contact section. So let's go over to our pages. Let's go to our contact. And if you'll notice, they have something for inquiries and collaborations, reach me here. You can use this, and this is possible to use. I just don't like this type of thing because then they have to start filling out information and it's, it's a little bit much. You can keep this if you want. I personally am just going to delete all this and then we're going to add a text box in here. So we're going to come in here. We're going to delete all of this and I'm going to say for inquiries, you can say reach out here, or I'm not spelling that right. You could just put a colon here. You could also put contact me like this. And there we go. So now we're going to add in an element here. Now this element is just going to be text. All we're doing is text, and you can make this as, you can do it much more in depth if you want to. But for me, I just want to go to text. I want to do a paragraph and we're going to come in here. I'm just going to add this in. And so we're going to get rid of this. Here are things that you need. You definitely want to include an email, and maybe I'll put it in lowercase, an email, a phone number. You can add in your LinkedIn profile, your GitHub, and I need to spell that right, GitHub profile, or really anything else that you want to add. And maybe we'll add some bullet points here. Let me see. What did I do? Let me see if I want to add some bullets. Don't have to, but I'm just going to put in my emails, alex@analystbuilder.com. This will be 111-222-3333. And then this will be where you put the link and you put the link. Now for these, when you put the link, make sure that the link works. So for example, we'll take this really long one. This should be your LinkedIn profile. Let's come back here. When you put in a link, make sure that let's preview it. if somebody were to go and click on it, it's going to work. Because as you can see, right now, this is just text. So let's go back to the editor and let's come in here. And we can even move this to where we want it, because we are going to make this a lot bigger in the future. But let's bring this up here. And let's say we want to make this link actually work. And that is important. What you need to do is you need to make it as a link. And so in the current window, does it open? No, we want to use this one. And it's actually a web address, not a page, but we'll paste the LinkedIn. This should be a new window. We'll click OK. And notice now it has that hyperlink. So if you want to, you can just leave the LinkedIn. But let's preview this real quick. I just wanted to show you this. So now when we come in here, if we click on this, it's going to open in a new window and it'll come to your actual text. This is something that we'll do when we actually link to some of our stuff in the blogs or in our projects when we make them. And so you can have it look like this, or you can, let's get rid of this whole thing. We're going to go like this, and we're going to hyperlink just like that. So now we'll go to a web address, paste it here, done. And now all they have to do is click on LinkedIn. And then the same for GitHub. So we'll say GitHub, we'll do a link. You put your GitHub in here as your actual link. And then when they come over, they say, oh, I want to check out this person's GitHub. They click on the GitHub and it brings them to the GitHub. And you'll most likely do, for that one at least, you do your portfolio repository. So that's what you need to do. And that's going to be really simple. And we can bring this up quite a bit. There we go. And we can increase all of this quite a bit as well. So we're going to come in here. We'll increase this. 29 seems fine. Doesn't have to be crazy fancy or anything like that, but you can do this in several different ways. So if you want to come in here and you want to put everything in the middle and get rid of the bullets. See if I can get rid of these. There we go. And then you can align it. If you want to do something like this and put it in the middle, I won't judge you. I promise. Let's drag this over. There you go. And you saw that little pink line, that's just to help with alignment issues. And so, you know, course building platforms as well as Wix is going to have that. And so now we have this contact section where they can contact you if they want to. And so you give them that opportunity, and that's really good. So we have our about section. Let's preview this really quick. We have our contact section. If they want to come over here and click on our links, they can. If they come to our about section, now they can see our beautiful, wonderful face, as well as some information about us. And then we have our blog. Now, right now, if we click in here, this is not our own, right? This is not our actual blog. This is something that we need to come in here and make posts. So once you get in here, we're just going to go back to the editor, because now this is our actual place where we're going to have blogs. But we need to do some things before we actually start creating them. We're going to just delete all these sections because we don't have any of this. So we're going to delete this. Let's see if I can delete this entire container. Let's delete. Oh, that's wonderful. And then this, we're just going to stretch out. And that's not what I was trying to do. There we go. So now it covers that whole thing. In this bottom portion, I believe something may show up, like most recent or something like that. I'm not 100%. So let's leave that here for right now. So now what we need to do is we need to actually create posts, and these are going to be our actual projects. So let's come down here to manage posts. It's going to pop us up back to kind of that home page, what it looks like over right in here. So it's pretty similar. And we have this blog right here. Now, we don't have any published posts. The template that we were using, which was right here, they had posts. And so if we clicked into them, let's look at loungewear pieces I swear by. So now their post comes like this. It has all this side stuff that we don't have. Ours is just going to be our text. So you can put images in there. You can put text. You can put quotes. You can put all sorts of stuff. And these are things that we're going to be doing in just a second, because that is what we're here for, is to showcase our projects. So let's come down here. We're going to create a new post. You can click either one. Let's go ahead and create a new post. Now, this is going to look like any other blog that you've probably ever tried to create. You're going to have a title. you're going to come down here, and this is where you actually post everything. You're going to post your content and your text and your images and your projects and everything. You can add images, videos, hashtags, anything you want. And so they make it pretty easy. Now, all we are going to do just to start, before we really dive into it, is I'm going to show you how to get it set up to make it look nice, and then we'll dive in and actually create the post. So this first one, let's say this is our food marketing analysis. So we'll call this food marketing analysis project. We'll come down here and we'll say link to code. So this will be where we add in our code for our project. Let's just say, for example, it's this one. We can come in here, we can say, here's our link. So that's really good. And then we're going to come down here and we can add just a little bit of details, or maybe we can even add like an introduction and then the code and then our narrative below it. It's pretty free flowing. You can do really anything. We'll say this is our project analyzing real food marketing data. We'll just keep it like this. Now, before we publish this, and it's saving it for us, one thing that we do want to do is we need to add in an image. Now, this is just something I did for fun. You can just Google images. You can do anything you want for the image, but I was using, for the one that I showed you at the beginning, I was using this AI generator, and it was really fun. So come in here, I'm going to say food marketing analysis, and let's just see what it comes up with. I don't know what model they're running on the back end. This might be DALL-E or something like that. I'd have to Google it, but it's like all these different ones. Now, I don't actually like that. Let's just say realistic food on a plate, and let's try this. All right, let's go ahead and keep this. You can use anything you'd like. You can get a lot more specific. Let's just save this so that we have an image that's going to be used when we actually post this. So this should be here in just a second. It's just saving it. All right, there we go. Let's go ahead and publish this, and I'll show you what it looks like on our website. So it's published. That looks great. Let's get out of this and let's preview our website. And let's go back and go to our blog. And now you can see we have one project here. And this is great, but we need more. I do recommend at least having 3. So 1, 2, 3 of really strong projects. Again, I really do recommend a lot of the projects that are on Analyst Builder because they were specifically designed for portfolio projects. So if you don't have enough projects, go take some of the SQL, Python, Pandas, Tableau. Those all have great projects in them that you can put in here, and I highly recommend doing that. But this is what it's going to look like on your actual page. We're going to have this, and then when you click into this, it's going to take you to all of our stuff right here. Now, it already has these tags, and we can alter those or get rid of them later if we want. You can allow comments or not allow comments. If you go to the bottom, we have things, we just have our, what is this, a footer here. So we have our portfolio, blog, about, contact that they can click on. And so up here, this is what it's going to look like. And so what we need to do is we need to create a really nice narrative in here. But we're not doing that just yet. Let's go back to our blog. We're just setting up some projects. So 1, 2, 3, that's what we're going to do. And let's go back to editor. Let's click in this projects section, and we want to manage our posts again. So we're going to do 2 more like that. So we're going to do 2 more. So let's come into posts. Let's add another post. This one's going to be for our actual US household income data. Now, there's 2 projects for that, exploratory data analysis and then the data cleaning. I want to do the data cleaning. So I'm going to say US household data cleaning project. This is our data exploration. I don't think I put the data cleaning in here. I have it pulled up because this is one that we're going to do. I'm going to show you how to kind of talk about it and in a narrative form, which is again a little bit different than just linking to your code in GitHub, which you can do. But let's come in here. Let's just link this like we did before, but we can always come back here and we're going to say link to code, just like that. In this project, we walk through the process used for cleaning the raw household data. And now we need to change our image. Let's go ahead and use that AI generator again. I'm just going to say nice houses in a row in the suburbs. Let's go ahead and create this image. All right, we want to keep that one, so let's use this image. Let's hit save. And again, we're just going to save this kind of as just a small template right now. We'll come back at the end. We have one more that we need to make after this. Let's add that to the page and we'll publish this. Let's get rid of there. So now we have 1 and 2 of our projects just kind of sitting there waiting for us. Let's do our third one. Let's go ahead and create a new post. Now for this one, we're going to use, I mean, all 3 of these are really good projects. This is our final project in Tableau. And this is the most realistic project you'll find on the internet. This is something that I have done for actual clients and actual people in my IT department back when I was an analytics manager. These are things that we build all the time, exactly like this. And this is called a KPI dashboard or a monthly KPI dashboard. So I think I want to make this one the project. So we're going to use this KPI one. This churn rate is also very common. But let's go ahead and we're going to do a monthly KPI dashboard or monthly IT. We'll call it a monthly IT KPI. KPI dashboard. Maybe I should call it IT monthly KPI dashboard. There we go. And we'll take, I shouldn't have backed out of there. We'll take this link. We'll say link to dashboard. Link to dashboard. And there we go. In this project, or I'm going to say in this dashboard. In this dashboard, we are building visualizations for our IT department on key KPI metrics. All right, let's come in here. Let's do AI image creator. Let's get wild. Let's see what it says. We're going to say IT people trying to fix a problem. And let's see what it comes up with. I mean, this could be just out of left field or it could look really nice. That looks great. Let's use that image. Let's go ahead and save this and we'll click add to page. Then we're going to go ahead and publish this. So let's get rid of that. So now we have our 3. Now remember, if you have 4, 5, 6, I recommend doing that up to about, I wouldn't go higher than maybe 7 or 8. And the reason being is once you have so many on there, it gets a little bit cumbersome with how it actually looks. Let's get out of here. So let's preview this again. Should have our new projects on there. So now we have our 3 different projects: IT monthly KPI dashboard, US household data cleaning project, and food marketing analysis project. All these look great. So our portfolio is really coming together. And real quick, let's edit this because I want to get rid of all these things at the bottom. So I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to see if I can delete all of it. There we go. I don't need to shop. You don't need to shop my look. I promise you, my look is not that good. There we go. So now we have everything we need. This looks really, really good. Let's make sure, let's preview this one more time. Let's make sure our about is looking good. It's a sharp suit right there. Our contact section is looking good. There we go. And we have our blog, which is looking good. Excellent. All this looks fantastic. You could even custom, if you create a custom image somewhere, you could even put text over this and you could say, data cleaning, or you could put the title of this over this so they can see it more easily. It's up to you. Either way, it's going to look good. Now, here's what we're going to do. Let's go back to our editor. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you on just one project. I'm going to show you, and maybe slightly 2, but I'm going to show you how to actually create your narrative project. Because what you can do is you could just in here, you could create a hyperlink from this and just send them straight to your code. And that's honestly what a lot of people do. And that's totally fine for most people, because some people just want to get in and see your code. Some people want to hear you explain it. They want to see your code, but they also might want to hear why you did what you did. So for example, we have our data cleaning. The data cleaning code isn't right here, but we can put it in there. But it's right here. This is a project in our MySQL for Data Analytics course. We are cleaning some very, very messy data. And what we do is we walk through this and we're going to say, here's what we did. Here's how we checked to make sure. And the good thing about this is we can also show the output. So we can show the before and the after. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come right in here. Let's click in here. We're going to go to Manage Posts. And let's click in to our US Household Data Cleaning Project. And this is all we have right now, but we want more, right? We want to add things. So let's come right over here. Let's see what you can add. You can add images, you can add videos, GIFs, you could post a file in here. So if you want to provide an Excel like that or something, you can, only up to a certain size, so maybe a small sample of your file. You can put in some HTML if you want to make it look really nice and you want to design it in a different way. You can put dividers and buttons and tables and polls and all this different stuff. Once we get in here, we're just going to customize it a little bit, make it look really good. And as we post code, we have this code snippet. And so we'll be using that as well. So let's come in here and let's just give them a little bit of a snapshot of why we need to do this. So you can add a lot of things in here. And honestly, everybody's narration is going to look completely different. And I don't even recommend you do it my way. I really recommend you doing it in your voice, how you would like to present this information, how you think someone would really like to see this in your project, because how you write tells a lot about yourself. So I might do something like purpose or background or context, or I might say something like that. So I'm going to say received raw household data from a client and needed to transform and clean the data to be used in a dashboard, or maybe I'll say a web application. And so I'll say the process, and this is just what I'm doing. Again, I really think you should do it however you think. I'm going to say process, and I'll say used SQL, specifically used MySQL to ingest the data. And then we'll say identified data inconsistencies. Let me see if I can spell this. All right, let's, wow, I was way off. Identified data inconsistencies and normalized the data using processes shown below. And this is where I'm going to start adding some extra information. So let's come in here and let's maybe just pull up the data. So let's just run this. And maybe we'll try to identify one of the issues in the data. And maybe this isn't the exact one we want. Let me come down here and let's run this. And we may want to show that these are some duplicates that we have in the data, and then how we actually removed those duplicates, because removing duplicates is very, very common in SQL. But maybe, just maybe, we want to copy some of this data. Now, I want to try something real quick. I'm doing this live because I haven't done it before. And I'm going to see if it works. I'm going to copy this. Actually, I'm going to right click. And I'm going to say copy row with names. And I believe that's the columns as well. Let's come back over here because I want to see if we come in here and we go to add, if we add a table, we can choose columns and rows. So let's look back here. I just want to see how this looks because I haven't actually done this before. We're going to see if it looks good. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. All right, let's try this real quick. If it doesn't look good, we won't do it, but we have 16 and we'll just do 2 rows. So let's insert a table and let's see if we can insert this data. That didn't work very well. Maybe I'm just copying it wrong, but not working for me. So that's okay. I'm just going to go back. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a small screenshot of this data. So I'm going to hit print screen. I'm going to screenshot this right here, just some of the rows of data. And what we're going to do is we're going to come right over here and we're going to paste that in. So it's going to upload that image for us. And again, you have different options of things you can do with it. Like if you want to link that to your code or something like that. So I'm going to say first, let's take a look at the data. And so we have our data here. Then I'm going to say we need to check for duplicates first. Let's do this by running a count on the ID, which should be unique. And so then we'll show our code and we'll do it just like this. So we're going to copy this. So then we're going to come back. Let's paste it right in here. And we're just going to highlight over this and we're going to do the code snippet. Now, I don't think this looks very good. It's doing a new code snippet for each one. Let's do Control Z. Let's go back. Let's paste this all in here. This looks a little bit different. And then let's come down here right below it. And in fact, let's put this closer together, just like this. Then we'll come down here and we'll say that we've identified some. Let's run this code. And we're going to print our screen again. And we're going to show that we have duplicates here. So I'm going to say, with this code, we can see we have multiple duplicates. And then we're going to paste our image. Now we're going to make this considerably smaller because this is ginormous. But let's see how we can do that. So let's click on our image. Let's drag it quite a bit down. There we go. And let's align this to the left as well, because I really don't want it to be in the center like that. It didn't look great. So we identified that we have duplicates. So let's come down here. We need to remove these duplicates. And we do that with this code. And then we'll paste our next piece. So now we're going to go down. We're going to go to this delete. And then we can come down here. I'm going to paste this in here after we do this. Let's see if this works. And that doesn't look good. We don't have to do it this way. We also could put it in a quote, or we could even just put it like this, or we can take a screenshot, whichever one you want to do. The only reason why I had it like this, because then they could actually look and type out the code, but we don't have to do it this way. We could always take a screenshot and let's just try it, see what it looks like. You can do it, whatever works best for you. We're going to take that picture and we're going to put that image in there and we're going to make it considerably smaller. Looks like we need to make it about that ratio. And then we'll align it to the left. And let's come down here real quick. We're going to say, now we have removed all the duplicates in our data. Now, you need to go into more detail. This is where we're going to stop for this lesson. But we have more detail in here. We took a look at Georgia and found an inconsistency with that during that project. So we fixed that. We standardized all of our data, and you can talk about that. There is a ton of stuff that we do in this project that's very real world. These are very real world things that you're going to see when you get into the real data. And then you just type it out. And you can add pictures to this. You can add images. You can make it funny. You can make it serious. Whatever you want to do. So let's go ahead and save this. Let's go ahead and publish this project. So now this U.S. household data cleaning project is complete. Let's go ahead and preview our website. So now when someone comes in here, they say, okay, whoa, these look like really cool projects. Oh, there's a U.S. household data cleaning project. Let's click into this. They are going to see everything that we wrote. So we're going to say in this project, we look at cleaning raw household data. Here's the codes. They can go to that code. They can do, they can look at the background, the process, and then we can walk them through exactly how we did exactly what we did. You can add more hyperlinks in here if you want to hyperlink on this, or if you want to hyperlink on anything else in here, you can do that. But this is what I was talking about. We can highlight over this code and they can kind of, look at it a little easier than something like this. So if you can use that code option, I think it is worth doing. One last thing that I want to mention in here is that we can also edit this. This is all just white and really simple. But if we come over here to settings, we can change some of the display and the design of how this looks. So you can change the navigation bar. You can change the text and the style, as well as change the backgrounds, buttons, and all of these things. And you can change almost everything in here to different shapes, colors, fonts, anything you want. It doesn't just have to be boring white, which is what we have it right now. Although white is fine. But if you want to get crazy and you want to change up a little bit, maybe do a light gray if you're feeling wild, you definitely can do that. But all you are going to do, the rest of really what you need to do is you need to come through here. You need to go back to this. And in fact, we do need to change that real quick from blog to projects. So let's go to pages and menu. Let's go right here. Let's rename this to projects, and I need to do it in all caps. So projects. Done. There we go. What you need to do is you need to come in here and you need to actually design your projects. This was just an example of how I would go about doing that. Again, it's a narration. Here's what I did. Here was the process. Here's the actual code. Here's the output. These things are super helpful. And so I think these would really show off specifically your US household data cleaning project. That would be how you can show that off. But if you have something like a dashboard, you can walk through, how and why you actually designed it the way you did. Why did you need current month's resolution rates and, different employee metrics that you're looking at. And so you can walk through your design process and why you built it, how you built it, etc. And so these are things that you need to go and do in each of these projects. And if you have more, do it for more. Honestly, you can, once you already have the projects done, doing this part, it's going to take maybe 30 minutes per project, 45 minutes per project, and you have knocked it out. Building the projects is by far the most difficult part. Building the website to display what you've done is going to take a lot less time, I assure you. So you can do that with Tableau projects. You can do the same thing with Python projects or Pandas projects. You can come in here, you get the data. Let's scroll down a little bit. Where are we? You can show visualizations. You can do all sorts of things. So similar to how we did the SQL, you can do Python or Pandas projects as well. And then you would publish this. So let's go ahead and publish this website. There we go. Let's go ahead and view our actual website. And this is completely free. This does not cost us any money. And so now we have a fully functioning portfolio website. So we have our portfolio, we have our projects. And you can see our projects right here. Those look great. Handsome guy, some say, not all. I'm aware of that. Some say handsome though. And then we have an about section. I don't know why I'm saying these things, honestly. We have our about section, and then we have our contact section so people can contact us. And so with all of that being said, we are rocking and rolling. We have a fully functioning, fully built out portfolio website completely for free, by the way. Thank you, Wix. You can use any website you want, but Wix is great. So this is our website. This looks really good. And you can even see other posts. So as they go down, they're like, oh, this looks great. Let me look at this food marketing analysis one. And you'll have that one written out. And that's going to look good too. So this is how I recommend it. In the past, and even on my YouTube channel, I've told people to use GitHub Pages, and I've used that myself in the past. But if you want it to look a lot more like this blog style, I recommend this. And that's what I've been telling people lately is, the GitHub Pages is great. It's free. It looks really good. But it is harder to customize. It is harder and takes a lot more time to set up and manage, whereas the Wix does it for free. And overall, I think it just looks better. So this is the one that I'm going to show you and the one that I recommend. You should go through though and look at all these other options because there's tons and tons of different ones that may fit your style better. Maybe you want it to look like this and put a bunch of pictures of yourself or your projects. There's so many options that you can do and templates that they have, and I recommend going through and doing it. At the end of that, when you have your portfolio, you're going to add that to your LinkedIn. You're going to add that to your resume. You want to post it places so that people can find it and they can see it. Because again, the whole purpose of this is to showcase your skills and your abilities and your knowledge. And you can't do that if you don't share it. If you don't put it on your resume, they're not going to see it and they're not going to be able to go and look at your projects that you've done. And again, I'm 100% a believer that you need a portfolio website. But most people don't put in the extra time to do it. And so if you want to stick out, if you want to have a better chance of landing the interview and better answers in your interview once you get into them, then I highly recommend doing this. So awesome job following along. That is our portfolio website. Hello everybody, in this lesson, we're gonna be taking a look at where you can apply for jobs. I'm even gonna show you hands-on how to actually reach out to recruiters, how to search for them, find them, and message them. But there are other ways to apply as well. That one we're just gonna put a big emphasis on in this module because I think it is just so important for you to know how to do and to work with. But there are other ways, and let's take a look at those ways. The number one way, and this is probably the way that almost everybody does it, which is just going on job search engines like Indeed, Glassdoor, and LinkedIn Jobs and applying. You create a generic resume that has all your information on it. Maybe you have some projects, and you go and you apply for those jobs. Hopefully you hear back, hopefully you don't. But I remember when I was first starting out, and this was back in 2017, when I got my very first job as a data analyst, I applied to over 1,000 data analyst or data related jobs. And I was only doing that on these job search engines or websites. Out of those, I only heard back from about 50. It was an extremely low callback rate. I only ended up getting a few interviews, and I did not land a job through 1,000 jobs of applying. Now, I didn't have everything that you have, which is I didn't have a portfolio website. I didn't have a perfect resume or all these different things, but it was not a very fun time in my life. I definitely thought I was never going to land a job, and I was having a lot of insecurity about, being good enough for this industry. And so that to me is one that you can do, and I still recommend doing it, especially because if you do work with people, you reach out to people, you'll still usually have to apply like every other person. But that is definitely not the optimal way to land a job or where to apply. Again, everybody goes to these sites, everybody does it. So you're just one out of, let's say, 100 or 200 that applies for a job. Unless you're one of the first people who apply and you have almost a perfect resume, you may not hear back because there could be 50 or 75 other people who have great resumes who applied very quickly. So again, a lot of competition there, and it's not the best place, but I still recommend applying to those places because you never know, right? And you can also use that later on to reach out to recruiters at those companies if you find a really good job that you are very interested in. And I'll show you how to do that in a future lesson. The next thing that you can do is visit career sections of companies you are interested in working for. For example, on LinkedIn Jobs, you could go on there and you can say, oh, I'm really interested in working at CVS Health. And you can do the easy apply there, or you can go on their actual website and you can apply on there. I have found that going on the website and actually applying, I actually get a lot better return. Maybe it's 5% of the time I was getting an email back, with more information or, being reached out to by an initial recruiter or something like that. But that compared to the 0.05% that I had with just randomly applying on Indeed, Glassdoor, and LinkedIn Jobs, the career section of the actual company tends to be better in general. Now, this next one is for, college people who are either in undergrad or are going through a master's program. Typically, you have a career department that will specifically help you with landing a job, because that is very beneficial to them. Because if you get a job and you say, hey, they really helped me land a job, you can have other people go to the college because they think they'll get a job too. So it really plays to the advantage of the college to have a career department that is going to aid you in finding that first job. Now, typically what they do is they often partner with a lot of local companies, or they partner with, previous alumni who are trying to hire for their company. And so sometimes they'll be able to directly get you in connection with a company that may hire for your type of position that you're looking for. They may also help with resume and a bunch of other things. And so that can be a really great resource to look out for. The last one, and this is what I think is the most important one, and this is what we're going to spend the rest of this module looking at, which is working with recruiters. Now, you can do that in several ways. The first one is just going to a recruiting agency's website and applying, or calling them or emailing them, or whatever you have to do to reach out to them. But you can work with these recruiting agencies and they can try to help you find a job. The next way is actually reaching out to recruiters on LinkedIn. So you find a job that you like on their LinkedIn Jobs and you say, hey, this job seems really interesting. I feel like I'm a great fit. Let me go find a recruiter that works for this company and directly reach out to them. I will show you how to do that in one of these lessons in this module. So if you are like most people, you're probably just doing the first one, which is job search engine websites, Indeed, Glassdoor, LinkedIn Jobs. That's not a bad place, but most likely you're applying to a ton of jobs and you're not hearing anything back. That is the worst place to be. These other options are going to give you a much higher rate of return on your investment. So you're going to apply to jobs on these other options, and you'll most likely hear back on a much higher percentage. And so these are some really great options. And depending on where you are, if you're in college or if you're a current employee or what it is, you really should consider these other options.
Hello everybody, in this lesson, we're gonna be talking all about recruiters. We're gonna talk about why they're really important, how they work, and how they can be really helpful to help you land a job. So let's start at the very beginning. What are recruiters and how do they actually work? I'll give you some of my personal experience from the employer side. So back when I was a hiring manager, why we worked with recruiters. I had a team of about 7 people. They were data analysts, business analysts, data engineers, as well as BI developers. So I had a bunch of different needs for my team. And so when I had someone who would be coming in or coming out of the team, whether they were a contractor or they were a full-time employee, I didn't want to spend all of my time searching for someone to replace them because sometimes it was a very niche skill that I was looking for. Sometimes I just needed them to know SQL and Excel, or other times I needed them to know Power BI and ServiceNow, which is, a Microsoft tool. And so it wasn't always something really easy and generic that I was looking for. And generally I had a pretty big team. I had a lot of responsibilities and I was very busy. So I didn't have the time to go and search out and talk to 100 potential candidates just to interview a few of them. And so that's where a recruiter came into play. So what we would do is we would work with these recruiters, and these recruiters will go out and they would search on all these different platforms. They'd go on LinkedIn, or they would go on Indeed.com or their own internal database, and they would search for people who meet the criteria for the skills that I was looking for. They would then reach out to all of them via email and phone. They would get in contact with them. They would vet them before they actually sent me the final resume. So in the end, for one position, I get about 10 resumes after they would vet about 50 to 100. That alone saved me about a week or 2 worth of work, and that is very, very valuable to an employer. So then I would go through those 10 people. I would select who I wanted to bring in for an actual in-person interview or via phone or Zoom. And then after all that was done, I would hire a candidate. Now, once I would actually hire a candidate, let's say their salary was $100,000 per year. That salary is for that employee alone. The recruiter doesn't get any of that. What the recruiter typically gets, and this is how most recruiters work, and this is how the ones that I've worked with work, they got a percentage of whatever salary that was. So we paid that person $100,000 for that job. The recruiter would get $10,000. So in total, to recruit that person and hire them for that year, we spent about $110,000. The recruiter was free of charge to the employee. The employee didn't have to give any of their money to the recruiter. That's not typically how it works, although some people think that's how it works. But we would just pay them a fee, a finder's fee for finding the candidate that we ended up hiring. And so that's what it looks like from the employer side. But let's talk about it from the employee side. So that's going to be you trying to search for a job. When working with recruiters, you can either reach out to them or they can reach out to you. I've gotten many jobs just from recruiters reaching out to me, inquiring about if I'm looking for a job. That almost always happened through LinkedIn, where I had my open to work and they would reach out to me because I had certain skills that they were looking for. But I've also been reached out to a lot of recruiters through companies like Indeed.com and Glassdoor because I sent my resume in and I was just in their database. You can also reach out to recruiters. So you can reach out to recruiting agencies in your local area, or you can reach out to recruiters at specific companies. You can do that on LinkedIn. I'm going to show you how to do that later on in this module. So with all that background, why would you choose to work with a recruiter when you can just apply for jobs yourself? I'm just going to give you a really quick background on when I was first trying to get a data analyst job. I applied to over 1,000 jobs and I tracked all of them. So I had a huge spreadsheet of all my jobs. I applied to over 1,000. That's a lot of jobs. I only got about 50 to 75 interviews, and of those, I got 0 job offers. It was very demoralizing, and I knew there had to be a better way, but I just didn't know what it was. And it turned out it was recruiters that entire time. Well, I got reached out to by a recruiter on LinkedIn. I was very nervous. I had never worked with a recruiter before. I didn't really know how they worked. But I ended up getting my very first data analyst job at a small healthcare analytics company from that recruiter. After that, I realized I need to be working with recruiters anytime I'm job searching because they are way better and way faster at helping you land a job. The reason that they can help you land a job a lot faster than doing it yourself is because those recruiters have a direct line to hiring managers, which you do not have. When you just apply for a job on LinkedIn, you're just going to be another resume in that list of maybe 100, 200, or 300 people. With a recruiter, they're going to vouch for you and they're
they're going to bring you directly to the hiring manager and say, hey, this candidate, Alex, is a really great candidate. You should interview him. Here's his resume. And they put your name and your resume in front of that hiring manager. And genuinely, that's pretty invaluable. And that's why when I have been job searching in the past, I've had 2, 3, 4, or even 5 recruiters that I was working with at one time. And so recruiters really just take you to the front of the line. They hold your hand, they say, hey, interviewer, this person's really good. And so you get in front of a hiring manager. And sometimes that can be the most challenging part of the entire process. So that is why recruiters are so useful and so helpful. In the next several lessons in this module, I'm going to show you how you can reach out to recruiters and how to work with recruiters. Hello everybody, in this lesson, I'm going to show you how you can get in contact with recruiters, and we're going to do that in several different ways. 1, I'm going to show you how to get them to reach out to you. 2, I'm going to show you how to reach out to recruiters on LinkedIn. And then thirdly, I'm going to show you how to look up recruiters near you or near where you want to work. And I'm going to show you how to either cold call them or cold email them. All of these things are things that I have personally done and did for a long time, especially when I was first starting out. And back when I was first starting out, I had to be pretty shameless. I was contacting them constantly. I was always checking in with them. I was working with 3, 4, 5, 6 recruiters at a time. And it takes a lot of work, but trust me, working with recruiters is very, very helpful. Now I'm going to show you the first way to do it, which is by far the most passive and the easiest way to work with recruiters. So what you're going to do is you're going to come right onto your profile. You're going to click Open To. You're going to say you're open to finding a new job. We're going to click on this. Now we have several things that we need to do. First, we have to add in a job title. So I'm going to say something like Data Analyst. I might type in business analyst and I'll click right here. And I can do other ones as well, like a healthcare analyst, because I have a healthcare background, or any of them. So you could have marketing analyst, you could have financial analyst, whichever ones that you feel you'd be good for. Then you're going to put down here location types. Are you going to do on-site only? Are you going to do hybrid only? Are you going to do remote only? Or are you open to all of them? If you're only open to one, just put one. So you can do remote only. But if you're open to being on site and hybrid, you can choose your locations. So for me, I live in Charleston, South Carolina. So I'm going to type in Charleston, and there's Charleston, South Carolina. Now, this is just something to think about, okay? I'm not trying to force you to do anything, it's just something to think about. Charleston, South Carolina is not really a big hub for tech. And so if I was just starting out in analytics, it might be kind of hard to only do on-site in Charleston, South Carolina. There probably won't be a lot of job opportunities for me. But there's maybe Columbia, South Carolina that has a little bit more tech jobs, or up in Charleston, North Carolina. Am I willing to relocate there? Am I willing to maybe go down to Savannah, Georgia, which is, several hours away? Am I able to relocate? This is something that you need to consider for your locations, because you may want to add in, maybe I want to add in Charlotte. I'll put Charlotte, North Carolina. And that's going to have a lot more opportunities. And then if I get an interview, I get a job, I can move up there. So that may be something to take into consideration if you're able to relocate. But remote, you have a lot more opportunities, but there is going to be a lot more competition because a lot more people want to be remote. And there's people all over the world willing to work remote. And so on site, I believe you have a much higher chance of getting interviews. You have a much better chance of working with recruiters and landing a job if you are close to that location, because a lot of employers do value that. There's going to be a lot less competition for local hires. The next thing that we need to do is the start date. Can you start immediately or are you flexible? I'll just say I'm looking for immediate. You can say full-time, part-time, contract, internship, temporary. When I was first starting out, I did full-time and contract. I may have done part-time, but I said no to internships and temporary. I wanted something that was, semi-permanent, if not part-time, just to get experience. Lastly, you have recruiters only and all LinkedIn members. Now, if you put recruiters only, what that's saying is it's going to show on the recruiter portal for LinkedIn. So if somebody comes in and they're looking to hire somebody, they get a recruiter portal that they're going to be able to search in, almost like a database. They'll be able to search through different keywords or different things that they're looking for, and they'll pull up different profiles. And so we're just going to say recruiters only, then we're going to click save. Now you can get email updates or notifications. I don't want those, so I'm just going to say no thanks. But now I'm open to work, and now if a recruiter searches my profile and finds me, then they can reach out to me and I can start working with them. Now, here's where this comes into play. Let's scroll down. The things that they are going to be looking at the most are not up here. It's going to be right here. You have got to add in your experience. You have got to add in your skills. That is an absolute must. You have to do this. When the recruiter is looking on the portal, they are searching by skills. Let's say they need someone who knows Microsoft SQL Server or Python programming. Those are just some of them. But you need to come in here and you need to put in some of your skills. So Power BI, Excel, data analysis, data analytics, all these keywords that they might search for, you want to have all of them. And so you need to come in here, you need to click on this to add a skill, and you need to just put them in. So let's say Azure Data Factory is my new skill. I can click on that, I can save that, it'll be added to my account. I don't want to add that right now, but you can add that. And so be sure to include all of your skills that you've been learning on Analyst Builder or in other places. Be sure to add those skills into your profile. This is a fantastic passive way for them to find you. The next most important part is your work experience right here, because they may be looking and filtering on people who have more than 1 year work experience, people who are new, if they're looking for internships or things like that. Lastly, you can have some activity if you're making posts, if you're making videos, if you're sharing your learning journey, whatever it is. I highly recommend putting that on LinkedIn. There's really no downside to doing that. And so when you do this, when you put all this stuff together, you create your profile, you add a nice picture of yourself, even though that was from many years ago, and you say you're open to work, that's how recruiters can reach out directly to you. The next way that we're going to get in contact with a recruiter is actually reaching out directly to them through LinkedIn. Now, I'm going to be doing this all, just as we go. So we're going to be going through this together. So we're going to look at jobs. No, I'm not hiring. We're going to go to the job section, and we are going to search for a data analyst. And let's see if there is anything in the Charleston area. Let's see if there's any data analyst jobs in Charleston. So here we have for Workday, that's Isle of Palm, South Carolina. It's right next to Charleston. Let's say we're going to go into Workday. So let's come over to Workday. This is the actual company. And we're going to go over to people. So we're going to be able to see people who work at this company. So they have 21,000 people who work for them. Now, here's the thing. We're going to be able to go and filter on several different things here. But what's really important, I feel, is actually getting someone who lives near you. Because if you're reaching out to a job in Charleston, South Carolina, and you reach out to somebody who lives in Charleston, South Carolina, and you write in the message saying, hey, I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. I noticed this job at your company, and I'm really interested in it. They are much more likely to answer it and to respond to you and actually try to work with you. So let's come in here. We're going to go to the United States, and we're going to search up here in this keyword, and we're going to say recruiter. Now we're filtering by the United States and recruiter. And then we can come down here and we can say, okay, this is a senior technical recruiter at Workday. And so all these people live in the United States. All these people are recruiters for Workday. Now, these are internal recruiters. These are not recruiters that are working for a third-party company like we've talked about in previous lessons. This is somebody who is directly working within this company. That can be a really fantastic way to reach out to someone. Now, these say connect, these say follow, and this one says message. So this person is open for me to message them. I'm going to go ahead and click on message. And right up here in the subject, I can say Isle of Palms, let's say analyst role. And in this message, and I'm going to put prompts down underneath this video that you can copy and you can use that'll be really successful in reaching people. But the general message is going to say, hey, Joby, and you're going to say, I noticed that there was a job open up at Workday for this position. I'm out in Charleston, South Carolina, which is right next door, and I'm really interested in this position. I'd love to connect and talk more about it. Just something simple like that, just to grab their attention and start a conversation where then you can talk more about it. You may even include your resume, so you can attach that as a file. So the resume that we created earlier on in this course, you're going to attach that as well if you want to initially, or you can wait until you have a conversation with this person and then you can attach your resume. Now, here's what I will say. You're not always going to get a response. I'm going to discard this. You're not always going to get a response from Joby. Maybe you need to reach out to 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 people. That just comes along with the territory. You have to be a little bit persistent. You have to keep messaging a lot of people until you hear back. And so you can do that with any job that you think is really, really good. You're like, man, this is my dream company. I really have the skills for this. I have a background in this. I think I'd be a great fit. I highly recommend reaching out to a recruiter internally within the company and trying to work with them. In my opinion, to work with recruiters, those are two of the top ways. And those are the ways that I've been the most successful with, either reaching out directly to an internal recruiter or having recruiters reach out to me, especially when I was first starting out, when I was out in Dallas, which is a major kind of tech hub out in Texas. That was a way that they contacted me 90% of the time, was either me messaging them in LinkedIn or them messaging me. So this is absolutely what I recommend. But let's come over here to Google. And let's just, I guess, stay signed out for right now. Let's come into Google and say tech recruiters in Charleston, South Carolina. And let me spell recruiters right. Oops. There we go. So we just searched for tech recruiters in Charleston, South Carolina. We're going to come all the way down to businesses. Now you'll notice there's a ton of links up here. Some of them are good, some of them are not good. But what I really like doing is I like going to these businesses. So if we zoom in just a little bit, you can see there's a ton of technical recruiters here in South Carolina near Charleston. For some reason, I'm not sure why there's so many. There's a lot of them in here. So what we can do is we can come in here and we can say, okay, which ones look good? Let's go ahead and click on more businesses. Let's come in here and try to find one that looks good. And here's Robert Half. That's a big company. So that's, across the country or across the world. But we could try to scroll down. And let's say we find this Aerotech. I've never heard of them, but what you're going to do is you really are going to go and look at a lot of these, and you're going to call them and you're just going to say, hey, I'm interested in these positions. I wanted to know if I could work with you guys to find a job because I think I'd be a really good fit for one of your potential clients. So you're going to call all of these numbers. And again, this takes time, but once you make those introductions, once you start working with these people, it absolutely will pay off in the long run. The next thing you should do is, if you don't get in contact with them, be sure to leave a voicemail, but then go to their website, find out how you can contact them. Do they have an email address? Do they have a location? And try to reach out to them that way. Maybe they only have a phone, but let's go to their contact us. And right here, it says, are you a contractor? You can say, I'm looking for a job. And look at that. They have a job board. You can also reach out to their local office. So that's for that one. Let's actually go back real quick. Let's go down to this Eastern Staffing and Recruiting. We can call that number. We can go to their website. And let's come over here to their contact. And let's see. So in here, we can fill out some of our information and we can actually directly email them, as well as look at their email right here. So sometimes you just need to dig into their website, figure out how you can get in contact with them, shoot them your message, shoot them your email, phone number, and all of those things. This company, by the way, got 5 stars with 280 reviews or so. So they look pretty good. So I'd be reaching out to a lot of these people. Again, I will have messages and kind of templates down below for these emails. I'm just warning you up front, this is a bit time consuming, but so is going on Indeed and Glassdoor and LinkedIn and applying to thousands of jobs. That's just as time consuming, but this is going to give you a lot higher return on your investment if you really put in the work. And I promise you, not as many people are doing what I'm showing you right now as you would think. And so if you're putting in that extra work that other people aren't willing to do, you're going to have a much higher chance of landing that job. And so that's how I personally have reached out to recruiters. I've worked with a lot of recruiters to actually land jobs. Highly, highly, highly recommend you doing this and taking this exact strategy and using it to land your job. Hello, everybody. In this lesson, we're going to be taking a look at an overview of what data analyst interviews look like. Now, there's a lot of different things that you can be asked in an interview, and they're going to be quite a bit different than just kind of a general or some generic interview. Data analyst interviews involve different types of questions that you may get, and we're going to talk about those in this lesson. Now, to start, before we dive into this right here, typically for a data analyst interview, you're getting a pre-screen either by a recruiter or a hiring manager, and then you're getting into the main data analyst interview where you're either, on a Zoom call or something like that, or you're face-to-face, but you're actually talking to the hiring manager with the intention of getting that job and getting hired. And so that's where this takes place. Typically, right when you get into a data analyst interview, you're just going to be asked the general questions. They're going to ask you things like, tell me about yourself. Do you have any experience? Why do you think you're a good fit for this job? And those are just going to be general questions that they're going to ask you. They may even ask you a question like, what's your greatest strength? What's your greatest weakness? These are just general questions that you'll get asked in almost any interview in the world. It doesn't matter what job you're applying for. The next type of questions is behavioral and situational questions. A type of question that might be asked during this part are, let's say you're working on a project and your coworker isn't doing any of their work. What would you do and how would you solve that? And then you need to give a good response to that. So you might say something like, well, I'd go to them directly. I'd ask them, what's going on? We have these deadlines. If that doesn't work, I might go to our boss and figure out some type of plan. But I would try to make sure that we get that project done by our deadline. But I also want to make sure that this person is getting the help that they need. Just something like that. So those are types of behavioral questions that they may ask you. They'll give you some type of situation and just see how you respond. This goes back to earlier on in this course when we talked about, being a good presenter, having good communication skills, and being a good culture fit. Sometimes these questions want to see how are you going to respond? Are you going to throw that person under the bus and be like, I'm going straight to my boss, going to try to get them fired? Or is this person, do they care? Are they trying to help? Are they trying to make sure the work gets done? So how you respond to those, they are taking that into consideration during the interview. Again, those first two you'll see in almost any interview. You could be applying to Wendy's and you might get asked that question. They'll say, oh, you saw the cashier take some money from the register and they're stealing. What would you do? That's a type of behavioral or situational question that they might ask at that type of employment. So those are, again, very, very common. Now, the next two are not super common. These ones are usually pretty specific to the technical world. So within a data analyst interview, you're often going to get some type of technical skills assessment. There's a few different kinds. You have whiteboarding, general technical questions, or a take-home test. Now, the whiteboarding is what you see in this image on the left. Maybe they actually write it out and you have to hand write out how to solve this question. So if you have 3 separate tables and you need to join them, you'll show them how to join them. That's just a little, snippet, but I have an entire course on how to practice for SQL technical interviews and Python technical interviews. And a lot of that centers around whiteboarding, but we also cover general technical questions in both of those courses as well. So that's what whiteboarding is, actually writing out and making sure that you know the syntax. Now, when you're answering those types of questions, I highly recommend saying your thought process out loud. You'll say, okay, in order to join these tables together, I need to use a join. I'm going to use an alias and join it on these columns. I'll do an inner join, and the reason I'm doing that is for this. Walking through that really gives them confidence that you know what you're doing, and they can really gauge your skill level. Now, the next thing is general technical questions. These types of questions are things like, say you get a dirty data set and you put that data set into SQL. How are you going to clean that data and ensure that the data quality is really high in order to put that data into production? Now, that is a general technical question because there may not be a specific answer. You're more talking about processes. You're saying, here's how I would clean the data. Here's what I would look for. Here's how I might clean it. Here's how I would put it into a staging environment, and then I would put it into the production environment once it's done. A lot of these little nuanced things that show that you know what you're talking about. Again, I have specific answers to those in those courses. So those are really good ones if you're about to take an interview. Now, the next thing is a take-home test. These are more rare. You don't get these as often. You maybe get these in 10% of interviews, whereas the previous ones, whiteboarding and general technical questions, you'll get those in like 85% of interviews. A take-home test is something that they may send you, and they're going to say, hey, we want you to do this. This is an Excel project, or this is a project with SQL, or we just want you to write a narrative. It varies widely in what they actually want, but I see a lot of take-home tests being in Excel. That's just pretty common. And they'll say, here's a data set in Excel. We want you to create pivot tables, or we want you to analyze this data, or we want you to create charts and graphs, whatever they're asking you to do. You'll do it and you'll send it back. Now, those they often want within a few days, and they'll take anywhere from an hour to 3 or maybe even 4 hours to do. Again, that's why they're not as common, because they take so long, but they do happen. And I've given a lot of guidance and helped a lot of people take those take-home tests because they can be kind of tricky sometimes. But that is the technical skills assessment portion of a data analyst interview. That doesn't happen in every single interview. Let's say you have, 3 or 4 interviews. You may only get those technical assessments in 1 or maybe 2 of those interviews, but you most likely won't get it in all of them because they're just trying to gauge, does this person actually know the skills that they have on their resume? Most of the time, they're doing this in SQL. Sometimes Sometimes they're doing it in Python or Excel, or maybe they do it in something like Tableau or Power BI if that's really all your job is going to be doing. But SQL is by far the most popular one that you'll see in data analyst interviews. The next type of question that you may get is general problem solving questions. Now, these can sometimes be somewhat similar to general technical questions depending on how they ask them, but they're going to ask you for different situations and they want to see how you actually work through the problem and solve it. So they might say something like, you get into work, you log onto your computer, and all of your processes and all of your data is completely gone. What are you going to do? And so then you kind of walk through how you're going to problem solve this. Are you going to try to figure out yourself? Are you going to go to somebody who knows more and work with them? They want to just see how you problem solve these different scenarios. And these questions can be kind of all over the place depending on what they're asking, but they can talk about data cleaning, or they can talk about, if something happens in the workplace, or any other number of questions that they may ask, and you just have to answer it to the best of your ability. So now that you know these things exist, you really should be preparing for them. As you know, on Analyst Builder, we have a whole questions page dedicated to the whiteboarding portion, so you can practice for SQL and Python technical questions. Highly recommend doing that. We also have the courses for interviewing for SQL and Python. Those are both really great. And then all these other different problem-solving questions, general technical questions, take-home tests, are all things that you can also kind of prep for as well. And if you get a take-home test, you just really dig in and try to do your best. Hello, everybody. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how you can practice for your technical interviews. Now, if you're taking this course, that means that you know what Analyst Builder is. And if you come right up here to the questions section, we have a whole technical questions page specifically designed to practice for your technical interviews. Now, these are the exact type of questions that you're going to get in a real interview. And I know that because back when I was a data analyst and I was actually applying for jobs, I would get technical interviews like this all the time. And then when I was a hiring manager and on a hiring team, we would ask potential candidates questions exactly like this. So here's what you can do. You can come onto this page. You can even go to the free ones because we have a bunch of free questions, and just start with the easy ones. Go to these easy questions and just try to solve them. And then go to the medium questions, and then go to the hard questions. You can go through and you can really tackle all these questions and get familiar with them. Now, let's go in here and just take a look at a question. This is exactly what a whiteboarding question is going to look like. You're going to have some type of prompt. They're going to give you some type of scenario. Then they're going to give you some type of schema or table. And so we have these columns right here. We have this rows of data, and then we have a way to actually write our code. This is exactly what's going to happen in a real interview. And sometimes you'll do it on paper and pencil. Sometimes they just want you to talk through it with them, how you would actually solve this problem. But sometimes it's going to be exactly like this. And in fact, there are tools that a lot of companies use where they will bring up some type of computer just like this. They'll have it ready for you, and you're going to actually write out your code in front of the person interviewing you. So it'll look very similar to this, and you're going to have to answer it. Now, I'm going to walk through this problem with you, and then I want you to go and try some yourself. I'm also going to give you some other options on ways to practice for technical interviews, but I'm going to show you exactly how I would answer this and what I would say to the interviewer while we're answering this question. Really quick, I'm just going to change this. You can do MySQL, PostgreSQL, or Microsoft SQL Server. Since MySQL is kind of ubiquitous, it really is used by almost all companies, we're going to go to MySQL. Now, this question is called heart attack risk. It says, Dr. O'Brien has seen an uptick in heart attacks for his patients over the past few years. He has been noticing some trends across his patients and wants to get ahead of things by reaching out to current patients who are at high risk of a heart attack. Seems like a good doctor to me. We need to identify which clients he needs to reach out to and provide that information to Dr. O'Brien. If a patient is over the age of 50, cholesterol level of 240 or over, and weight 200 or greater, then they're at high risk of having a heart attack. Write a query to retrieve those patients, including all columns in your output. As cholesterol level is the largest indicator, order the output by cholesterol from highest to lowest so we can reach out to them first. So we have a lot of things going on here. Now, I'm going to answer this like I am you, like I am taking an interview and I want to get this right and I want to really look good while I'm answering it. So what I would say to the interview, I would actually say this out loud, is I would say, okay, so there's some things that we need to do. One, we need to filter on this data. So I'll say, I need to filter on age of greater than 50. So I'm going to say age greater than 50. I'm going to say cholesterol 240 or over. So that means greater than or equal to. And then we also need a weight of 200 or greater. So I'm going to say weight 200 greater than or equal to 200. The next thing we have to do is order by, because we need our output from highest to lowest based off the cholesterol. So we're going to take the cholesterol, and we'll do that in descending because that's highest to lowest. Again, I'd be saying all this out loud so they would understand what we're doing. Let's go take a look at the data. So we have age, cholesterol, and weight. Those are our columns that we need. And in the output, in our select statement, we need to select all of them because it says right here, include all columns in your output. So we're not just going to select a few columns. We'll keep all of the columns that we need. So we'll just keep that star there. But the first thing that we can do is we can come up here and we can filter on our data. So we're going to say where, and we need to take this age column. So we're going to say where age, and this is where they're greater than 50. So we don't want greater than or equal to because our prompt says just over the age of 50. Then to do another filter, we'll say and. So we're going to say and, now we're going to take cholesterol. I'll copy this over here. It says cholesterol level of 240 or over. So we're going to say where it's greater than or equal to 240. And then we'll do one more. So we're going to say and we'll take the weight. So now the weight has to be 200 or greater. So we're going to say greater than or equal to 200. Let's go ahead and just run this to make sure our query is working. And it is. So now we have all of our filters done. We need to order by cholesterol. So we'll come to the very end. And we'll do our order by because we have to have the order by at the very end of our query. So now we'll order by cholesterol and we'll do that descending. Let's go ahead and run this and let's check our answer. And as you can see, our solution is correct. And so that is exactly how I would answer that type of question. Now, just to go back really quickly, I'm going to come back here. Questions to the difficulty of easy and moderate. These are going to be questions that you'll get in entry level, maybe mid-level positions, depending on the company. For questions like hard, these are questions that you'll get at mid or senior level positions. So if you're just starting out, I highly recommend nailing all these easy ones down because you will get questions like that. I promise you. Moderate questions you might get, those will be some joins or maybe some subqueries and things like that. But I highly recommend at least doing all of the easy ones. And then of course, we have a bunch of ones that you can get with either our subscription or through one of our bundles. And you can get access to all the questions and going all the way up to the very hard ones, which are super, super difficult. These are like senior data analyst or above. They're quite challenging, but they're very, very fun. And so these can be very simple prompts, but very difficult answers. And with all of these, I really want you to feel comfortable doing these. All of these answers or all of these questions have the answers in them. So you can come up here, and if you're having trouble, you can look at the solution, and I have a video explanation of every single one on how to answer it. It's just meant to be helpful to you. So I walk through my thought process, how to answer the question, and that's for every single question. This is genuinely, in my opinion, the best place to practice for technical interviews. There is, in my opinion, no better place. Now, to be completely transparent and fair, when I was first starting out, Analyst Builder wasn't a thing. And so I used to use LeetCode. So if we come over to LeetCode, I will show you how to use LeetCode, and LeetCode has a free section as well. You can go to LeetCode and they have a ton of different things. They're mostly for software engineers or software developers, but they do have a section called Database. And if you come down here and you click in here, you can practice just like on Analyst Builder, you can practice these questions, but they aren't specifically made for data analysts. That's what Analyst Builder is specifically made for. These can be all sorts of things. Sometimes they're extremely difficult and they have no relevance to a data analyst. And sometimes they don't. But to be fair, this is what I used when I was first starting out. And so if you're interested in LeetCode, go ahead and check out LeetCode because LeetCode is also a really good platform. Now, two other things that I really recommend you doing is one, and you don't have to do this, but one is building a project. So taking real data and building a project in something like MySQL or Microsoft SQL Server, but taking real data and building a project. If you take our full course for MySQL for data analytics, we have 4 full projects using real data for data cleaning and exploratory data analysis. If we come right down here, you can see this is what the data looks like. We're updating and we're filtering And we're starting really simply, but as we go on throughout the project, these things get really complicated. And so actually building something, actually taking real data and trying to clean it, and that's what this project is our data cleaning project. Cleaning up data is very difficult. And so you learn a lot by getting hands-on and actually trying these things out. The last thing that I would recommend, and again, I'm promoting these things because I genuinely think they're the best solutions on the internet right now. I don't know of any other platform that does it as good as Analyst Builder does. That's just my opinion. But we have an entire course called MySQL Interview Crash Course. We also have one for Python. So if you have interviews in Python or Pandas, then we have an interview crash course for that. But in this crash course, you're going to learn querying basics, group by, join, subqueries, window functions. And then on top of that, you'll learn how to answer the general technical interview questions. So these are questions about how to collect data, how to clean data, how to optimize queries, and things like that. Questions where there may not be a specific answer. They're just general technical interview questions, but ones that you will get asked in interviews. So I hope that was helpful because answering these questions is very realistic to questions you were going to get in the real world. And that's the feedback we always get is we say, Alex, I didn't think this actually looked like what a question would be until I got one and it looked exactly like this. And then I aced it and they were really impressed. And I get that feedback often. And so I know that this is still very, very relevant. This is still extremely realistic and you absolutely should be practicing and making sure you are ready for your technical interviews. Hello everybody, in this lesson, I'm going to show you how I would do some preliminary research before I actually go in for an interview. Now we're just going to pretend that this is the job that we're going to be interviewing for and we need to do some research on it. So we're going to look at the job description, then we're going to go over to their website to kind of see what they do and see what kind of questions we might want to ask them and to just have some questions prepared. And also not be completely blindsided to what this company does because they're going to say, hey, what do you know about our company? And you can say, well, I did some research and here's what I know about it. And I think it's really interesting, which is a much better answer than I don't know. Can you tell me about your company? Because that shows zero initiative. So what we're going to do is take a look at this one. I just searched for data analyst jobs in the Charleston, South Carolina area. That's where I'm from. And I found this one, which was really interesting to me because when I was going through it, one, it's healthcare and I have a big healthcare background. So really glad I got this interview. But two, the job description seemed pretty vague. It didn't have a ton of details, which gives us a lot of room for questions. So let's take a look at this position really quickly. It says the data analyst 2 reports to the manager of analytics in support of MUSC's academic research and healthcare missions. This is a healthcare company. You're going to be working in a few different areas. And if we come down here, you're going to be developing, implementing, and maintaining the analytics program, supporting decision-making strategy, performance, improvement, and other key operational goals through valid, relevant, and quality decision support, report dashboards, and other analytic tools. So a bunch of jargon, really. There's nothing really specific in here, and it doesn't even mention any skills or anything like that. One thing it does mention is there's a cost center. So I believe you may be working in the Community Connect IS reimbursement, which is in the healthcare world, something like claims. So I would be writing down some questions around here. You know, what part of the company will I be working with? Is it this cost center right here? Because that may be very different data than working with doctors and hospitals. In this position, you may just be working with reimbursement, which is insurance and claims and all these different things, but it doesn't really talk about it in here. The other thing it says for education and requirements, high school diploma or 4 years of experience, bachelor's degree or a master's, and then just some experience with analytics and customer service. And that's about it. The last thing is actually an EPIC certification or proficiency. EPIC is their EHR system. I'm super familiar with EPIC. If you don't know what that is, you can Google it. And so that's the beautiful thing about doing your research. You can say, what is an EPIC certification? And so that would be a bonus if you know what that is going into that interview. So I would write that down. Some of the questions that I would ask just from the job description alone are what tools are you specifically using for your dashboards? What tools are you using for gathering your data? What department is this part of? Is it part of this reimbursement or the cost center? Because that's very different than working directly with, like I said earlier, with doctors. That's going to be very, very different. And so these are questions that I would ask just from the job description. So we already have about 2, but now let's go over. We're going to go over to MUSC Health. We should be able to find somewhere in here where it has a link to their actual There we go, to their actual website. So now we're on their website, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look around. I'm going to see, what they're about, what they do, where they're located, and all of these different things. The other thing that I'm going to be doing is thinking about what kind of data I might be working with. Because as I go through here, I can just think, how is this data going to be collected, or how would this be used for the company? And this is really interesting stuff. Right off the bat, you can schedule appointments. You can find doctors. Do you need urgent care? So they do a few different things. They have a scheduling system, which is really great. They have a bunch of different doctors, and they have different departments within it. So they have urgent care. Let's come up here, their medical services. Let's come right over here. They do just about everything. This seems like a fully functioning hospital where you can do just about anything. So there's a ton of data around the procedures, the doctors. And then with all of those things, there's going to be things like insurance. So maybe we'll come up here. We have things like insurance data. We'll have patient and billing data, their medical records, so storing all of the data on every patient. Again, they can schedule appointments. So that could be data that they use to see when a lot of people are scheduling appointments. So that's really useful and relevant. They also do things like virtual visits, which is really neat. And so there's a lot of stuff on here. So some questions just from this very brief time that we spent on here is I would be asking about, their insurance, how they're actually collecting that data. If they're collecting data for the patient billing, which is something called claims data. So insurance and patient billing is working together. You wouldn't have to know that, but these would be things that I would be asking about. And then some more general questions is I would just ask, who would I be interacting with? Am I interacting with the actual doctors and nurses and the hospital staff? Or am I working more on the insurance side? Am I working with the providers? What clients would I be interacting with? Or is this mostly an internal position? So these are all different questions that I would be asking. And honestly, that's enough. That is plenty. You know what they do. They're a hospital that provides a bunch of different services. You can schedule online. They take insurance. They have to bill their patients. There's a ton of stuff that's just there waiting for you. And you can do that with every company that you are actually getting an interview with. I highly, highly, highly recommend doing this because you do not want to go in there and say, what does your hospital do? What services do they provide? You want to come in saying, I know what you guys do. I'm really interested in how you do that. Who is this position working with? And that is something that's really going to set you apart from other candidates who just come in kind of blindly saying, what does your company do? What is this position? What data am I working with? You'll have some more pointed questions, and that's going to make you look very, very good. So that's what I have always done for all of my interviews. I've had lots of interviews where they've been very impressed. And when I was a hiring manager and I had people do that, I was very impressed. I was like, hey, that is a great thing to do. Really glad that you already know this about us. And that left a very good impression. So I want you to leave a very good impression as well.
Hello everybody, in this lesson, we're just gonna be talking about some of my best tips for interviewing. Now we've already covered a ton of stuff, but I'm just gonna give you a few extra that we may not have covered. The first one, and probably the simplest one, is just to stay positive. I cannot tell you how many times I have interviewed somebody and they were very negative. They were negative about their previous employer, they're negative about, their work, just everything. And that really leaves a bad impression, kind of a bad taste in your mouth. So even if things aren't perfect in your life, and nobody's life is perfect, I just recommend trying to stay as positive as possible. Positivity is really infectious and people like it. And so employers like a positive person much more than they like somebody who is a Debbie Downer. My second tip is to come prepared with questions. So research that company like we talked about in a previous lesson, do some research on that company and have some pre-prepared questions. Now throughout the interview, you may have some additional questions that you have, but be sure to write those down so you have multiple questions that you can ask. Because at the end of an interview, almost always, they're gonna ask, do you have any questions? And it's fine to just say, no, I don't really have any questions. You answered all my questions, but it shows a little bit of initiative if you say, I actually have some questions that I have prepared because I was doing some research on your company and I'm really interested. That shows them that you're really serious about this position and that you're really interested in their company. And again, just leaves a really good impression. My last tip, and this is just a little bit superficial if I'm being honest, but I still think it's very important, is to dress really well. I myself wear a suit and tie. I've been doing this since I was trying to land my very first job. I just wanted to look presentable. I wanted to look really nice, and I always try to leave a good impression. That's not to say that you have to wear a suit and tie, but I definitely think some type of collared shirt, some type of nice pants, nice shoes for the men. I think that is the least that you can do. I don't recommend jeans and a t-shirt for almost any interview.
Even when you're online doing some type of Zoom call, I still think that you should put on some type of collared shirt. Now for the ladies, it is similar. I recommend a dress or some type of pantsuit or blouse and pants, something to look nice. Be sure to do your hair, men trim your beard, just look presentable and look as good as you can. Again, that one is superficial, but it does make a difference. If you have somebody who's really put together and is really doing well and they can articulate well and speak well, then it just all comes together. But if you have someone who is really articulate and good at speaking, but they don't look the part, it can sometimes feel out of place. And so we already covered a ton of stuff in this module. Those are just some extra tips on top of that I thought were really helpful. Hello everybody, in this lesson, we're gonna be talking about salary expectations. Now, depending on a ton of different factors, that'll determine how much you should be expecting for your salary. For example, in the United States, entry-level analysts can earn between $50,000 to $75,000, and that's a pretty wide range, but it even goes a little below that and a little above that, depending on where you live, your industry, and a bunch of other things. Right here it says the actual salary depends on several factors, including location, years of experience, skills, and industry. For example, if you get an entry-level analyst position at Microsoft, you're going to be making a lot more than if you get an entry-level position at a nonprofit in the same place. You may have the exact skills and experience and everything else, but the actual job itself is going to be in an industry that pays a lot more. So that $50,000 to $75,000 is just a general guideline. For people in the United States, that's typically about what you're going to make. For other places around the world, you should definitely look into this and do your research. So you should be going on places like Glassdoor, or you can go look on LinkedIn to look at salaries for those types of positions that you're looking for. If we come over here to Glassdoor, this is a place that I've used a lot. I find this to be fairly accurate. What you can do is you can come in here and you can say, I want, and let's do entry level data analyst. And there we go. And then for the location, let's put Dallas, Texas. So this is where I used to live when I got my first entry-level data analyst job. Let's go ahead and search this. And as you can see here, based off of Glassdoor, it's saying around $49,000 to $78,000 for entry-level data analyst in the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area. Now, this is where I used to work. This is really accurate to the figures that we were looking at, which was $50,000 to $75,000. This fits right in there. But you can also come in here and you can say, okay, I'm working in education. Education is going to be a lot lower than if you work in something like financial services. That's going to be a lot higher. So the industry definitely matters. Now, if you look at years of experience, if you have a lot more years of experience versus no years of experience, it's going to be a little lower for no experience. Now, this is all kind of community fed data. So people who are in the Glassdoor community supply their salaries, and then you can know that it's fairly accurate. But you should do this for your location because you don't want to go into an interview not knowing how much you're worth. You can also look up specific companies. So you can come up here and you can say, okay, let's take a look at some companies. I'm applying for I'm getting an interview for a company for a position at Microsoft. And then you can come in here and you can look at these different jobs and you can find one. So let's type in data analyst. Let's type this in right here. And you can see down here for a business analyst in Atlanta, Georgia, it's $83,000 to $183,000. So you can really dig in and you can find about how much you should be looking for these specific positions at specific companies. And I highly recommend doing this because this is going to matter a lot when we get into negotiating your salary. The next thing I want to talk about is actually negotiating the offer. So you go in for the interview, they really like you, and then they give you an offer. And let me tell you something, almost always the offer is negotiable. I know this because when I was a hiring manager and I was on a hiring team, we almost always negotiated the offer. And almost every single job I've had, I've negotiated my offer, except the very first one, because I just really wanted to accept the offer. I didn't really know what I was doing and I just wanted to make sure I got the experience. And so I didn't negotiate that offer. But almost every offer is negotiable. So let's talk about what you need to do in order to negotiate the offer. One, you just want to review the offer really thoroughly. There are things that are negotiable and there are things that are non-negotiable. For example, they may not negotiate on stock options or things like that if that company offers stock options. They may also not be negotiable on things like vacation days or even sick days if they have those two as separate things. But sometimes they are negotiable. In fact, at a previous employer, every year I got 2 weeks of vacation, and I negotiated that up to 3 weeks when I got a promotion. And so that was something that I knew I could ask about and ask if that was negotiable, because I would like more vacation days. And that was something that they were willing to compromise on. The main thing that you're going to be negotiating on, though, is typically the salary. So what you want to do when you're negotiating the salaries, you want to ask for their salary range. So for that position, they're going to say, our salary range is $65,000 to $75,000 for this position. You want to get really specific. You want to go look at their company, do some research on what they are actually paying their employees at that company. You want to see in that industry, for your years of experience in that area, what you should be expecting. Now, if that falls within that $65,000 to $75,000 range that they're giving you, I always still recommend actually asking for the most that you can ask for, because they may give you an initial offer of $68,000 and you go back and you say, okay, based off of all of this information and my skill level, I believe that I'm worth $75,000. And then you can counter with that. So you can write up a letter, or you can ask them on the phone, just say, I'm looking to make closer to $75,000. And you just kind of leave it at that. You don't have to say, I really think I'm worth it and all these things. Just say, I would like this salary because based off of market expectations, this is what I believe I'm worth at this time with my skills. So you can just really briefly write that up in an email and see how they respond. I would say about 70% of the time, so 7 out of 10 times, they're going to be willing to negotiate. They'll say, okay, well, instead of 68,000, we can't go all the way up to 75, but we'll meet you at 71,000. That is extremely, extremely common, because believe it or not, they don't want you walking away and taking another job or turning down their offer. They want you to take that job. They don't want this position to be vacant for another month or two. They want to hire you. And so you do have some power here to be able to counter with another offer. But you do need to be willing to be flexible. If you say, I want 75,000, or you say, this is what I am worth in this current market, then you need to be willing to compromise when they say 72 or 71. I don't believe that you should really just stick to your guns and say, I have to have this amount. Now, with that being said, something that you need to consider is what your bottom dollar that you're willing to accept is, because that is something that you shouldn't be willing to be compromising on. For example, if your budget, if you absolutely need to be making, let's say $60,000 in order to switch jobs, and they're offering you $55,000, you should be upfront with them and say, hey, listen, I make, $55,000 in my current job. I'm not looking to switch jobs for anything under $60,000. If you're not willing to go that high, I may not be able to accept this position. I do believe that I'm worth around 65 to 75, and so I believe that 60 is a good compromise. Is that may be something that you have to draw a line and say, look, I'm not going to leave my current job for less or the same of what I'm currently making. If I'm going to leave my job for your company, I do want some type of salary increase. Now, they may say no. And so you have to either really, stand firm in what you have said and believe, or if you're really wanting to switch jobs and you want to be really flexible, you can say yes to that. But I do believe that you should draw a line somewhere that you're not willing to cross so that you can kind of negotiate based off of that. Negotiating can be a little bit awkward if you've never done it before, but trust me, they're expecting it. They oftentimes don't expect you to just accept the offer blindly. Most companies, I would say 85% of companies or more, are expecting you to negotiate in some way. They're usually giving you a lower offer, and they're hoping that you just accept it because then they save a lot of money, but they are expecting you to negotiate in some way, and they're willing usually to come up another 5 or 10% on that salary. With all that being said, I really do recommend you negotiate every single offer you get, even if it's just asking for more vacation days, because they may say no in other areas, like the salary is non-negotiable, but they may be willing to compromise in other areas. That may be something that they are willing to do without having to increase their budget. Hello, everybody. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about how and when to ask for a promotion. Now, this is a wonderful time in your life because you have some experience, you're doing really well in your job, and you're like, hey, I want and I deserve a promotion. And there are times and places for this, and there is a right way and a wrong way to do this. And I'm going to be talking a lot about that in this lesson. Now, the first thing that we're going to start with is when to ask for a promotion. So when do you actually do it? And then we'll talk about the how do you actually do it. Now, let's say you just landed your first data analyst job. You're doing a great job. You're absolutely killing it. And you're wondering when you should start asking for a promotion to maybe a mid-level data analyst, or maybe just, Instead of a junior data analyst, you're just a data analyst, right? So when should you be doing this? I think if you are absolutely knocking it out of the park, you are taking on big projects and you're doing lots of important work, then I think it's reasonable to do it about the 9-month mark, but that would be my absolute minimum. I don't know of anyone who's really successfully done it before that without looking kind of bad. Because if you start asking for promotions right away or early on in your career, it kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth for that employee. It's just like, oh, geez, I mean, come on, you haven't been here that long. Do you really deserve a promotion? Have you taken on enough responsibility to earn a promotion? I think for most people, 1 to 1.5 years is extremely reasonable. Sometimes even 1 to 2 years, depending on the company or, their culture around giving out promotions. But if you are doing a really good job, and that's kind of an assumption here, you're doing a very, very good job at this company, they're giving you lots of responsibilities, then 1 year to 1.5 years is a very reasonable time frame to ask for a promotion. Now, at almost every company, they do something called a performance review. That's usually one time during the year where they're doing a review of your performance for that year. It's typically at the end of the year in like October, November timeframe, but sometimes some companies do at the beginning of the year in like the February, March timeframe. But regardless, they will review your performance at some time. Now, if you know you're going to be getting a good performance review, it's good to kind of give them some heads up that you're wanting a promotion. So for example, when I was an analytics manager, I had an employee who was doing a great job. She was actually a business analyst, but she actually wanted to be promoted to a BI developer. And so she started talking to me about that about 3 months before her performance review. And I told her, I said, listen, I think you have the skills for it. I think you're great for it. Thank you for telling me early, because I want you to have that. I want to give that to you. And so what we did was we created a quick plan of things that she needed to do so that I could justify to our HR department why she was getting this promotion. Oftentimes you don't think about that. There is a whole nother side to getting a promotion. Your boss has to justify that promotion to HR potentially. They may have to justify the budget increase to give you more money for that promotion. So you can't just ask for it and they're like, yep, it's done. Oftentimes if you do it a few months before and you say, hey boss, in a few months during our performance review, I think I've done a really good job. I am looking to maybe move up in the company, and here are the things and here are the reasons why I think I deserve that and have earned that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the how to ask for the promotion. But this is the when, so I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. But during performance review is a great time to do that, although honestly, you can do that anytime, even after performance review or in your performance review. But let's talk about the next thing, which is if you're taking on more responsibility than your original job description, that is a great time to ask for a promotion. For example, if you were hired on to do mostly dashboards and data visualization, but then you start getting brought into all these different projects and now you're doing data cleaning and data collection, then you can say, hey, I'm taking on a lot more responsibility and projects than I was originally hired for. I think that warrants some type of increase in salary or promotion. So that can be a great time to ask for a promotion. And the last one is definitely a highlight. Highly recommend this, which is after you complete a big project that helped the company. So I remember back when I was a data analyst, I was a contract to hire position at this Fortune 10 company. I had just gotten off a big project, and I was one of the only people who knew how to do this specific thing called MIPS, and that was a really kind of tough project. But I kind of came in and I looked like a hero because nobody else knew how to do it, and that's what I did at my previous employer. And so I came in and I took on this really tough, really difficult project, and they gave me a promotion shortly after that from a junior data analyst, because that was my title at the time, to a data analyst 2, which is 2 pay increases above that level. And so when you complete big projects, you look very, very valuable to that company. They want to keep you around in case anything like that happens again. And so that can be a really good time to start kind of probing and looking for a promotion. Now let's talk about how to ask for a promotion, because you may be doing the greatest job in the world, but if you don't ask for it, which is really important, or you don't ask it in the right way, you may not get that promotion. So the first thing before we get into any of this, the most difficult part of it, honestly, is just actually asking. It can feel a bit nerve-wracking. It can feel awkward. But if you have a good relationship with your manager, these should be conversations that you have maybe in your weekly meetup, that you have your one-on-one with them, or during your performance reviews. You should be able to talk to them about these things, and you should be developing that relationship because they are one of the most important people for your career where you currently are. So just some helpful advice I would recommend, cultivating that relationship with your boss. Now, let's look at this first point. It says, gather evidence of your achievements, such as successful projects, metrics, positive feedback from colleagues and supervisors. All of this is kind of gathering data. You're gathering the reasons and the data to support your actual request. Because the worst thing that you can do is to go into that promotion and say, well, I've been here for 2 years. I believe I deserve a promotion. Time really doesn't have as much impact on promotions as you would think. Most companies nowadays are doing it based off performance. Are you really bringing value to this company? And if you're not, if you're just there and you're just doing, the basics and you've just been there for a long time, that doesn't really mean you deserve a promotion. That's a terrible excuse for asking for a promotion. So gathering projects that you've worked on, things that you've picked up, different accomplishments that you've had is really important. And you can also get endorsements or other people to say, hey, Alex is doing a great job. We really value here and we want him to stay at our company. So you can gather that feedback as well. That's definitely the first step that you need to do. Next is you have to request a meeting with your supervisor. I highly recommend doing it after what we were talking about before, which is doing it after a big project that was really successful, or if you've been taking on a lot more work and you're doing a really good job. Keeping it positive is really important because if you just had a really tough time in a project, you and your supervisor's relationship is really strained, and then you come in asking for a promotion, that's not going to end well. It's almost going to be an automatic no. So absolutely take into consideration kind of the vibes of the office. I'll say it like that. Are there a lot of positive vibes about you, your relationship with your boss, how you're doing? If so, then that can be a really good time. The other thing to consider, and it kind of goes back to that other one when you're requesting that meet, you want to request a dedicated time to discuss your career progress rather than bringing it up in casual conversation. I don't think this is something that you should be talking about over coffee with all your friends around or coworkers around. Maybe they're not your friends, but your coworkers around. I think this is something that you should be intentional about. Like I was talking about earlier, if you have a weekly one-on-one with your boss, this might be something to bring up during that time. And then lastly, what's really great is just expressing your interest in advancing within this company. And then you can outline all those data points that you gathered, all of the projects and the metrics and the positive feedback. That's when you present that information. I do really want to highlight that you really want to express to them like, hey, I love working here. I really want to work for this company long term. I really do want to highlight that first part, which is just expressing your interest at staying at the company. A lot of companies have a lot of problems with turnover because, they don't pay enough or they don't value their employees enough or whatever. And if you're a really good employee and they want to keep you, you can say that back to them by saying, I want to stay with you. You value me as an employee. I value you as an employer, and I want to advance in this company. And so with that, I want to grow with your company by getting this promotion and staying here longer. These are all fantastic things to do. And trust me, as a hiring manager, I had seen it both ways. I've seen it where this one employee was not doing a good job and he asked for a promotion. And I told him, hey, look, you're not really sticking to your timeframes. You're missing out on work. Yes, you've been here for 2 years, but honestly, the work that you've done is not up to par, and that shows in your performance reviews. And so I said, if you do want a promotion, you have to do these things and you have to get back in good standing in order to receive that promotion. Well, that person left shortly after and they didn't stay with the company a long time. I really think they just wanted the promotion to have a higher job title to then go shopping around to other companies. But it just doesn't leave a good taste in your mouth when somebody comes to you and they haven't done a good job and they're wanting a promotion just because they've been there a long time. I've had other employees, like the employee I was talking about earlier, who came to me and said, hey, I'm taking on all this other work. I'd like a promotion to this job title because I'm doing that work. And I'm like, you know what? You are doing a fantastic job. You deserve this promotion. Let's see how we can make this happen. And that employee also talked to me during our one-on-ones each week about wanting that. And so that wasn't out of the blue. That was something that we had talked about over time. Whereas the other employee, that was kind of out of the blue. I'm like, you haven't done a great job and you're asking for a promotion. And we've never talked about this before. Doesn't really seem like something that's going to happen. So take all of that into consideration when talking about promotions, but promotions are a great thing. So I hope that once you get into the data analyst world, you'll come back to this and you'll use this so that you can get that promotion to that higher paying role or to that other job title that you're really trying to get. Hello, everybody. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about something a little uncomfortable, which is when to look for another job. That's going to be uncomfortable because you're leaving your current employer, and sometimes you're leaving on good terms and sometimes you're leaving on bad terms. And I've had both, and I'll share some of my stories about looking for other jobs in this lesson. Now, when you're looking for another job, it can be for many reasons. One, you could just have limited opportunities within your current job, and so you're looking at other companies that may have better opportunities. This is extremely common. You get hired as a data analyst, maybe at a smaller company, but that company doesn't do a ton of maybe advanced things, or they just kind of do what they do, and you don't have opportunities to work with new technologies. You don't have opportunities to really rise up the ranks because it's kind of a smaller company, and you're thinking to yourself, man, I just don't see myself here long term. That may be when you want to start looking for, another job at another company. Next time to look for another job is when you feel like you're really stagnating in your skills, because you don't want to be in a data analyst role for 10 years and you really know just the basics of SQL, Excel, and Tableau because that's what you use at your employer. You want to feel like you're learning and you want to feel like you're growing as an analyst and as an employee, because 5-10 years down the road, you want to be able to be really marketable as a senior data analyst or an analytics manager or something like that. And so if you feel like your skills, knowledge, and talents are not being fully utilized or challenged, that may be a time where you're like, you know what, I'm just stagnating here. I'm really not growing in this company. I don't feel like I'm being fully utilized maybe. And that can lead to a lot of other emotions. And this sometimes is an emotional process. It can lead to a lot of emotions on not feeling like they're utilizing you. You don't feel maybe respected, or you don't feel like what you're bringing to the table is being really utilized. Now, just to stop here for a second and talk about a reason why I changed jobs a long time ago is my very first real data analyst job. I was at a small healthcare analytics company. I felt very highly valued there. I felt like I was really growing as an analyst. I really liked working there, and I was learning a ton of SQL, really advanced stuff, and I loved it. But something was happening behind the scenes, and it was affecting me and my family, which was the employer was missing my paychecks, which meant sometimes I would get them 3, 6, 10 days later than I was supposed to. And when I would ask them about that, they would say, well, we didn't get paid by one of our clients, and because of that, we couldn't pay you. And that was a big red flag to me. And it's not super fitting in with these two right here. This was just one of them, and I'll tell another story in a little bit. But that made me kind of nervous because I was the breadwinner of my family. And if that company went under, I would not be able to afford my rent and be able to afford food for my family. And that really got me scared. And so that I did not feel a sense of security at that company. And so that's why I started looking for other jobs. And I eventually did get another job. Along with that, though, I also was looking for the third bullet point, which was a better opportunity, better compensation, benefits, career prospects. That company, I wasn't making a ton of money. In Dallas, Texas, that was making $63,000, which was a good salary, but it definitely was not as much as what other companies were paying for, because Dallas is a big metropolitan hub. And so I knew other companies were paying $75,000, $85,000, even up to $100,000 for good data analysts. So in that role, that was the main reason. It was just I wanted more security in my job. But a secondary reason was because I kind of outgrown what the company was willing to pay me. And so it was kind of all coming together for me to look for another job. And that third point, I didn't highlight it enough, but that third point is a very valid reason. Let's say you're underpaid somewhere, or your place doesn't have good benefits, or you don't feel like you're going to advance at that company for a long time. That is a very justified reason to start looking for another job. But on that point, I want to talk about when I went from a data analyst to an analytics manager, which is a big, big jump in my career. The reason I started looking was because I felt like I'd be a really good manager, and I knew that they made a lot more money. And at the time, I was really trying to provide for my family. We were wanting to move to South Carolina. And so there were some things that I was really looking to try to achieve in my career. So I started looking for other jobs, both internally and externally, for jobs that would give me better pay, better benefits, and, just really improve my career overall. That job was actually an internal promotion. So I went from a data analyst 2 to an analytics manager, just in a different department. So that is absolutely a good time to look for another job or another position, is when you feel like you're maybe underpaid, you don't have great benefits, you just want to advance in your career overall. That is a very legitimate thing to do. And I have found, because I would say I kind of job hopped here and there, is that when I did change companies, I had a lot of leverage to ask for more money, to ask for better benefits and different things, because I already had a job. So if I didn't accept that position, I still had my full-time job. So these are some of the reasons when I would start looking for another job. I will say though, the timeframes vary. For example, you don't have to stay at a place, 2 years before you can look for another job. If you're feeling like your skills and knowledge and talents are completely underutilized and you're not respected and it's just not a good position, you can start looking after 3 to 6 months. That can very easily be justified in an interview. When they ask you, why are you leaving your current employer? You can tell them and just be honest with them, here's what's going on, here's why I'm looking for other positions. And it seems like, based off the reviews, that you guys have a lot of upward mobility and you use a lot of skills that I'm looking to use. And so in my opinion, the time frame isn't as important as the actual reason of why you're leaving.
Hello everybody, and congratulations for completing our course on how to land a data job. Hopefully by now you are extremely confident in the entire process, because we covered a lot in this course. What you have to do now is just believe in yourself and follow the process. Reach out to those recruiters, make sure your resume is up to date, and go out there and make it happen. If you haven't already, be sure to check out all the other courses that we have here on Analyst Builder.